Warrior Lore. Chapter 3942. Xiaohua shook the mountain river seal and retrieved Jiangsheng. He then activated his flying technique and flew towards Feather Spirit Bay. Not long after, Xiaohua arrived at the place where he met the snake spirit. Looking at the familiar place, Xiaohua sighed. In just one night, so many things had happened, which made Xiaohua realize a lot. At this time, Yuling Bay was different from before. Whether it was humans or demons, there were much fewer people. The shops and tents were equally desolate. Xiaohua identified the direction and landed on the ground. Seeing a Confucian cultivator hurriedly flying by, he hurriedly stepped forward and cupped his hands. "Greetings, fellow immortal." That Confucian cultivator looked at Xiaohua and said coldly, "What do you want?" "Sorry to disturb you, fellow immortal. May I know where Flowing Thunder residence is?" Xiaohua didn't get angry and asked with a smile, "Flowing Thunder residence? I don't know." Hearing this, that Confucian cultivator waved his hand and flew away without thinking. Damn it, we're all humans. Even if we're different, there's no need to be like this. Xiaohua sneered, and then he looked left and right. After that, he flew over a few hundred meters and blocked the path of a leopard spirit that was similarly riding a demonic cloud. "Fellow immortal, I wonder if fellow immortal knows of the lightning flow residence? Flowing Thunder residence?" That leopard spirit's yellow eyes turned a few times as if he was thinking. Then he shook his head and said, "I don't know. You'd better ask other demons." Seeing the leopard spirit hurriedly leave, Xiaohua pinched his chin and became anxious. "It can't be, right? I don't know one. I don't know two. This Jiangsheng can't be lying to me, right?" Looking around, Xiaohua walked into a small tent. The inside of the tent was similar to a shop, but it was very small and there weren't many things. Seeing Xiaohua enter, a shrimp-like member of the sea race hurriedly greeted him and said with a smile, "Fellow immortal, what do you want to choose?" Xiaohua looked at those ordinary pearls and said with a smile, "I don't want to buy anything. I just want to ask for directions." "Hee, fellow immortal, please tell me." The shrimp-like member's attitude was very good. "Does fellow immortal know Flowing Thunder residence?" Xiaohua said. Seeing the sea shrimp's hesitant appearance, Xiaohua started to feel apprehensive. Sure enough, the sea shrimp shook his head and said, "Sorry, immortal friend. I've only been in Yuling Bay for half a year. I've never heard of the place you mentioned. If you want to find out, it's best to find the demons who have lived here for a long time. They should know." As soon as Sea Shrimp opened his mouth, Xiaohua immediately thought of the general of the sea race near the Bai and Yazi auction hall. Perhaps only the monster race would know such a strange place. "Thank you, fellow immortal." Xiaohua smiled and cupped his hands before walking out of the tent. "Who are you? Do you have proof of Yuling Bay?" Just as Xiaohua walked out of the tent, a rather shaky voice sounded in front of him. Xiaohua raised his head to look. It was a group of shrimp soldiers and crab generals holding shining weapons in their hands. They just happened to pass by this tent. Seeing a Dao sect cultivator walk out from inside, they immediately surrounded Xiaohua. Xiaohua naturally wouldn't put these small shrimps in his eyes. He took out the jade pendant that you gave him and said, "This is the proof that this old man got from the Sea Whale King. You can take a look for yourself." "Sea Whale King?" The leading crab general's eyes bulged out of their sockets. He looked at the jade pendant in Xiaohua's hand and said coldly, "As long as it's not a token issued by my Yuling Hall, it's invalid. No matter who you are, you have to come with us to the Yuling Hall." "How dare you?" Xiaohua snorted and angrily rebuked. These shrimp soldiers and crab generals were so scared that they trembled. However, they had already received the order from the Yuling Hall. No matter how scared they were, they didn't dare to not brace themselves and surround Xiaohua. Roar! At this moment, a bright cloud of fire flashed in the sky. Ao Jing roared all the way back to Yuling Bay. Along the way, he threw fireballs randomly. Who knows how many flowers and plants were damaged? "Brothers!" Xin Kong's voice sounded behind Ao Jing at the same time. "Each team will be divided into two groups. One half will continue to search for suspicious Confucian cultivators. The other half will form a team outside Yuling Bay and spread out to search the inland." Yes, the shrimp soldiers and crab generals surrounding Xiaohua didn't dare to disobey the order. Half of them flew out of Yuling Bay on a demon cloud. The remaining half looked at Xiaohua's clothes, scratched their heads, and thought for a moment. They asked, "Are you a Confucian cultivator?" "This old man is a Taoist cultivator." Xiaohua raised his sleeve and said with a smile, This half of the shrimp soldiers and crab generals shook their heads and let Xiaohua go. Then, they continued to search in front. Damn it, with this kind of soldiers, they want to catch this Xiaohua? What a fool's dream. Xiaohua laughed inwardly and flew towards the Yazi auction house. On the contrary, when he arrived near the auction house, apart from a small number of demons on guard, there were fewer shrimp soldiers and crab generals patrolling. The humans and demons who were watching the excitement also disappeared. Even the shops around the auction house were mostly closed. The previous lively scene was nowhere to be seen. However, the shop where the sea race general sold sea relics was still half open. It seemed like it was waiting for Xiaohua. Xiaohua's figure had just stepped into the shop when a respectful voice sounded. "Senior is here." "Oh, why are you still here?" Xiaohua was slightly taken aback. "Who are you?" Without waiting for Xiaohua to answer, a Yuan thought swept over from afar. It landed on Xiaohua. Soon after, a cold voice sounded. Xiaohua naturally noticed that there were people from the auction house inspecting nearby. He was not afraid of being discovered. When he heard the question, he turned his head and said with a smile, "This one is Xiaohua. My Taoist name is Taoist Xiao. What's the matter?" "General, what's the matter?" The person who came was a sea race general wearing armor. He looked like a big octopus. On the side of the armor, several tentacles held several different weapons. He looked very mighty. "Taoist Xiao?" When the sea general heard this, his expression changed slightly. After all, a Taoist cultivator who could be called a Taoist master should be at the early Yuanying stage. He was not someone he could resist. However, the sea general looked left and right. He swam towards Xiaohua and asked, "What are you doing here? Do you have a certificate issued by my Feather Spirit Palace?" "This Taoist Xiao is this little one's friend." Yuan hurriedly ran out of the shop and respectfully said to the sea general, "He came to the Feather Spirit Bay to play. This little one has already helped him obtain a certificate from the Sea Whale King." Hee. When the sea general saw Yuan come out, he unconsciously sneered and said, "The Feather Spirit Palace has already issued an order. Apart from the certificate issued by the Feather Spirit Palace, all other certificates are invalid. All human cultivators with invalid certificates are to be detained in the Feather Spirit Palace. Their whereabouts and any suspicious signs will be investigated. Since you are related to this human, you should also come with this general." Yuan was clearly stunned. He took half a step back in fear. However, it was only half a step. He stepped forward and said, "Senior Xiao is invited by this little one. This little one will guarantee his identity with my life. This little one will follow the general to the Feather Spirit Palace." "You?" The sea general was startled. He was clearly caught off guard. However, he immediately waved his tentacles and said, "What is a small shrimp like you doing in the Feather Spirit Palace? Be a good boy and stay aside." Then the sea general looked at Xiaohua and said, "Taoist Xiao, do you want to go by yourself? Or do you want this one to invite you?" Impudent. At this moment, a rather dignified voice came from behind Yuan. The owner of the shop, the sea race general, walked out and scolded, "This is this general's honored guest, Brew. Why aren't you scramming back?" The sea general called Brew was shocked when he heard the scolding. He almost naturally bowed and said, "This subordinate greets General Liu." Just as he said this, the sea general suddenly woke up. He straightened up and coldly looked at the sea general called Liu and said, "Liu, don't forget, you are no longer a general of the North Sea Dragon Palace. What qualifications do you have to order this general around? This general is here on the orders of the Feather Spirit Palace to investigate suspicious humans. Since you are colluding with this human, you might as well come with this general to the Feather Spirit Palace." Xiaohua coldly watched from the side, his heart somewhat rueful. There was a struggle for power and fame between the human race, and it was easy for people to scheme against each other. Xiaohua clearly smelled this kind of dark smell between the Haijianglu and the bromine. Lu's face was extremely unsightly. He opened his mouth to say something, But it was very clear that Bru was no longer a small soldier under his command. He could not order him around, but if he let Bru take Xiaohua away, Lu could not bear to. After all, he already saw hope in Xiaohua for a group of old soldiers to get rid of their injuries. It was not that Lu did not think of inviting Xiaohua to the Feather Spirit Palace, and then he would tell him about Xiaohua's abilities. But the problem was, he didn't know if Xiaohua was willing to cooperate with the North Sea Dragon Palace. If Xiaohua wasn't willing, and he had leaked Xiaohua's divine ability, it would bring disaster to Xiaohua. Lu didn't think he would do such a thing. Second, even if Xiaohua was willing to cooperate with the North Sea Dragon Palace, how could the North Sea Dragon Palace waste a divine doctor like Xiaohua on these old soldiers? There was no lack of shrimp soldiers and crab generals in the North Sea Dragon Palace that could not be cured. Xiaohua would not have the free time to treat the old soldiers that he cared about. What if I can vouch for you? A faint voice sounded. The sea snake, Dee, also walked out and coldly looked at Bru. When Bru heard Dee's voice, he hurriedly retreated. It was as if he had suffered a great loss in Dee's hands. His several tentacles quickly danced. He was even more shocked. You. What's wrong with me? Can't you recognize me? Dee said with a smile. The dignified Xiaohai general is really awe-inspiring. How come I have never seen a soft octopus with a hard bone? Oh my, I forgot. How can an octopus have bones? I really overestimated you. Dee. Bru's tall figure was like paper in front of Dee. He slightly swayed. He somewhat inarticulately called out. Why are you here? If you vouch for me. -13. Chapter 39:43. At this point, Bromine hesitated. His two slightly transparent eyes trembled rapidly. He looked at Xiaohua, then looked to the left. He was afraid that this was a trap set for him by Dee. However, Bromine had been here for a long time, and other soldiers had started to pay attention to this place. This gave Bromine the so-called encouragement. Fine. Bromine clenched his teeth and said, You're the same as Lu. You're no longer a subordinate of the North Sea Dragon Palace. What qualifications do you have to guarantee? Since you're with this human, you can't get away with it. You don't know what happened in the Yazzie arena last night. Let's go. Bromine took a few steps forward, and the weapon on his tentacles danced arrogantly. Is that so? Are you sure you want me to go? Drip took a step forward with a faint smile. This simple step scared Bromine into retreating a few steps, as if he didn't dare to get too close to Drip. You're pissing me off. Just as Drip was about to push Bromine back, a low, powerless voice came from behind Drip. Then, Chio's grandfather, Old Shrimp, staggered out with a shabby crutch. Without saying a word, he swung the crutch at Bromine. Bromine's body was naturally much bigger than Chio's grandfather. The crutch also looked funny. Bromine only needed to lift any one of his tentacles to knock it away. However, seeing Old Shrimp's crutch coming at him, Bromine didn't dare to move. He just let Old Shrimp's crutch hit him. Bromine could only wave his tentacles and the weapon in the air. He shouted in exasperation, Old man, you're a veteran who's been through fire and water. You've bled a lot for the North Sea Dragon Palace. You've done a lot in battle, but you can't delay me. I'll guarantee for Daoist Xiao. Old Shrimp said loudly, If you want to take Daoist Xiao, then take me too. You can't do it either. Bromine didn't dare to fight back, but when he saw some of his colleagues coming over, he gritted his teeth and answered, Of course Old Shrimp can't do it. What about us? We'll all guarantee for Daoist Xiao. As he said that, another group of old Sea Tribe members came out of Lu's shop. Some were Sea Tribe members, some were Sea Tribe members, some were loaches, and some were crabs. This. Bromine was at a loss for words. He glanced at the soldiers of the North Sea Dragon Palace who had surrounded them, then quickly fled. Although these veterans didn't have any official positions and were on the verge of death, they had made outstanding military contributions. They were all old ruffians who couldn't rub sand in their eyes. They were far from what the current soldiers could afford to offend. Usually, these old ruffians would reprimand these soldiers whenever they saw them, let alone now that Bromine had provoked them. The group of Dragon Palace soldiers saw that the situation was not right and ran away, leaving only Bromine to stay behind. Bromine was dumbfounded at the sight of so many veterans. His head was bigger than a mountain. He didn't think that his duty of inviting this strange human to the Feather Spirit Palace would cause so much trouble. Fellow immortals. Xiaohua smiled and cupped his hands. There's no need to make things too difficult for this general. Although this Xiao participated in the Yazi Auction Hall's auction, this Xiao withdrew from the auction midway for some reason. Although this Xiao doesn't know what happened in the auction, if this Xiao needs to go and ask, this Xiao has no objections. Look at Taoist Xiao. An old loach clapped his hands. He's really a Taoist master. He can kill you with a raise of his hand, but he's still talking to you calmly. Little octopus, do you think this kind of Taoist master is the human Confucian cultivator you're looking for? An old crab waved his claws and shouted. If Taoist Xiao wants to go to the Feather Spirit Palace, we'll go together. Wherever Taoist Xiao goes, we'll go together. Hearing this, Xiaohua didn't need to look anymore. This must be an old ruffian. He hadn't even met Xiaohua, and he was already relying on Xiaohua. This. Bromine began to step back and said with a somewhat panicked tone, the Feather Spirit Palace is looking for a human Confucian cultivator. This Taoist Xiao is obviously not one. Just now my eyes were playing tricks on me. Bromine was a junior in front of these veterans. He couldn't afford to offend any of them. Before the veterans surrounded him, he hurriedly withdrew. At this time, Bromine wasn't afraid of anything going wrong. Although these veterans looked old and weak, they had all risked their lives for the North Sea Dragon Palace for so many years. Their words might not be as useful as his in the Feather Spirit Palace, but in the Feather Spirit Bay, 100 of him couldn't compare to one of them. Seeing Bromine leave with his tail between his legs, several veterans still scolded themselves. Damn it! Where did this little bastard come from? How dare he behave so atrociously in front of me? Xiaohua smiled and didn't say anything. He just stood aside. Taoist Xiao. Lu stood aside and said with a smile, I'm sorry to make you laugh. Bromine was a little narrow-minded, but he was timid and didn't have too many bad intentions. I guess he saw that Taoist Xiao was a human and wanted to take credit for it. In fact, if Taoist Xiao wasn't the Confucian cultivator they were looking for, they wouldn't make things too difficult for Taoist Xiao. It doesn't matter. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, if it wasn't for the fact that I was still worried about your injuries, I'm afraid I would have left long ago and ignored his little tricks. Many thanks for Taoist Xiao's pity. Seeing Xiaohua return, Lu was already happy in his heart. However, he was still uneasy. He didn't know whether Xiaohua came back for the sea sirira or to save the old sea shrimp. Now that he heard it, his heart had already flown away. His eyes blurred, and he hurriedly bowed to express his thanks. Sea Snakely moved his body and said in a low voice, let's invite Taoist Xiao in first. Now that there are changes in the auction, the entire Feather Spirit Bay is heavily guarded. It's better not to attract the attention of the Feather Spirit Palace. Yes. Lu woke up and hurriedly said, Taoist Xiao, please come in. Please. A group of veterans were now very obedient. They all had smiles on their faces and opened the door of the shop. Although the other party was from the sea race and might have human blood on their hands, Xiaohua saw that they were all like the old sea shrimp. Many parts of their bodies were wrapped in seaweed, and some strange smell floated out from the seaweed. Xiaohua still raised his hand and said, Seniors. Speaking until here, Xiaohua stopped again. The sea race was a monster. There was no way to call them seniors. However, before Xiaohua's face became awkward, the group of veterans hurriedly bowed and said, Taoist Xiao, please. Seeing this, Xiaohua no longer modestly declined and stepped into the shop. Then, these veterans hurriedly came in under the lead of the old sea shrimp. Taoist Xiao, please sit. After Lu walked into the shop, he hurriedly took out a chair from who knows where and respectfully placed it beside Xiaohua. Xiaohua looked at the group of veterans. Those veterans hurriedly raised their hands and said with a smile, Taoist Xiao, please. All right. Xiaohua sat down, looked at Li and said with a smile, Is this Xiao's pill easy to use? Li swam over and prostrated herself in front of Xiaohua. She said in a low voice, This one thanks Taoist Xiao for the pill. This one's illness has been completely cured. Even, this one feels that my strength can still increase in the future. Oh. Xiaohua was slightly surprised, but he immediately understood. The soul-nourishing pill refined by the green-robed Xiaohua was refined in the space. There were 3 moon stars and 6 sun stars in the space, so the power of the stars and moon naturally surpassed that of the hidden immortal continent. Moreover, the soul-nourishing pill nourished Di's soul, allowing Di to better control her own bloodline through her soul. Moreover, the secrets of the sea snake's bloodline could also be known by Di, so Di could use these to enhance her strength. After understanding, Xiaohua said with a smile, "Then I congratulate Taoist Xiao. I didn't expect that the pill that this one casually refined would have such an effect." Casually? Casually refined? Li was somewhat dumbfounded. In her eyes, that pill was really miraculous and wonderful. At the same time, Lu said in surprise, that pill was really refined by Taoist Xiao? Naturally. Although it was refined by the green-robed Xiaohua, was there any difference between this and Xiaohua's refinement? Xiaohua naturally admitted with a smile. That? Lu opened his mouth as if he wanted to ask, but he was somewhat hesitant. Xiaohua said straightforwardly, "Since this one has returned, I also want to see if I can do anything for you. After all, if your illness can be cured, then you can hunt less sea relics. This is also a matter of boundless virtue. It's just that this one doesn't know much about your sea race's healing techniques. Similarly, I also don't have the pill formula for refining pills or medicines." "This is easy," an old ruffian shouted without hesitation. "We will kill our way to the apricot forest medicine shop and make them hand over whatever pill formula." Xiaohua smiled but didn't say anything. The sea snakely hurriedly said, "If you want to go, then go." In this way, even if Taoist Xiao wants to help, he won't dare. Yes, I was just joking. Taoist Xiao shouldn't take it seriously." That old ruffian laughed mischievously. He naturally understood that Xiaohua wouldn't let him loot the human race's medicine shop and harm the human race's interests. "Taoist Xiao," Lu said from the side. This one also thought for a long time just now. It's not realistic to get the pill formula from the apricot forest medicine shop. Moreover, his pill formula might not be useful. Taoist Zhao's pill formula still needs to be obtained from the North Sea Dragon Palace, Zhaixing Lu, Yazi Auction House, Li Lai Trading Company, and Luo Yi Merchant Union. Of course the Dragon Palace has it, but the Feather Spirit Palace may not give it. Zhaixing Lu, Yazi Auction House, and Li Lai Trading Company need to bid. To be honest, not to mention whether these things are available, we don't have many sea crystals and may not be able to bid. The last place left is the Luo Yi Merchant Union. This one has heard of the Luo Yi Merchant Union's reputation before. It's a merchant union formed by the demon race of the 1,000 Demon Sacred Realm. It's not large in scale and its transactions are always fair. Moreover, they are indeed resourceful and can get things that ordinary demon race can't. This one wants to see Taoist Xiao and ask him clearly. This one will go find the Luo Yi Merchant Union now. -13. Chapter 39:44. Oh. Xiaohua smiles and turns to look at Yuan, asking, "Is this your recommendation again?" Yuan hurriedly waves his hand and says, "This is not what I said. General knew about it, and then asked about it. That's why I reported it to you." Xiaohua thinks for a while and says to Lu, "It would be best if you could find Bei Wen who recorded the pill recipe in Luo Yi Merchant Union. I would be able to refine pills according to the recipe." "Taoist Xiao, you don't want to go with me?" Lu is a bit surprised and disappointed. Xiaohua smiles, "I don't know much about the pill recipes of the monster race. It doesn't matter if I go or not. You only need to ask the monster race in Luo Yi Merchant Union for the pill recipe. They should be in charge of it. Moreover, I have something important to do. I'm afraid I can't accompany you." All right. Lu naturally wants Xiaohua to go with him. However, Xiaohua has something important to do, so he can't force him. Beside him, Drop hastily asks tactfully, "Taoist Xiao, what is it? Do you want to do it in Yulingbei?" And Xiaohua nods. After thinking for a while, he asks, "Do you know a place called Drifting Pavilion?" Drifting Pavilion? Drop thinks for a while and shakes his head. "I am familiar with every place in Yulingbei, but I have never heard of Drifting Pavilion." Could it be that this drifting lightning abode that Taoist Xiao mentioned is located outside of Yuling Bay? Xiao Hua shakes his head and replies, no, it's in Yuling Bay. Drop looks at some old soldiers on the left. After thinking for a while, he says in a low voice, Taoist Xiao, if possible, you should ask these old sea race. Xiao Hua nodded, then raised his head to look at the closed shop door and said, everyone, this Xiao came to Yuling Bay to look for an old friend. He left a message for this Xiao, saying that he was at the drifting pavilion, but this Xiao couldn't find him anywhere in Yuling Bay. I wonder if anyone can answer my question? Drifting pavilion? The group of old Oceanids are also slightly startled. They all look at each other, wanting to share Xiao Hua's burden. However, they seem to have never heard of this name before. One of the old Oceanids even asks, Taoist Xiao, do you think this flowing lightning residence, is it the E-residence? Or a place name? Or a brothel that you humans often talk about? Xiao Hua smiled and said, this Xiao doesn't know either. I only know the name of this place. Io. Suddenly, Old Sea Shrimp seemed to have thought of something and said hurriedly, I remember now. It seems that there is such a place. But, oh, you know about it? Hearing this, Xiao Hua was overjoyed. Seeing that Old Sea Shrimp didn't say anything, he asked, could it be that there's something strange about this place? Indeed. Seeing Xiao Hua being so cautious, Old Sea Shrimp winked at the group of Old Sea race members and whispered a few words to Xiao Hua. Sure enough, Xiao Hua's brows slightly creased. After a while, Xiao Hua smiled and said, since this Xiao has come, then I should still make a trip. Everyone, just stay here, or go somewhere together. General, hurry to the Luai Merchant Union. When this Xiao pays a visit to my old friend, I can refine some pills or medicines for you. Okay. Lu nodded vigorously and said, I'll go now. When I find the pill formula, we'll meet at Yaoshi. This place is too close to the Yazi auction house. After all, it's inconvenient for Taoist Xiao to be here. Indeed. You all go first. I'll immediately go find a Feather Spirit Palace certificate for Taoist Xiao, an old sea race member said hurriedly. Xiao Hua watched as Lu opened the shop door and the group of old sea race members walked out. He said to the fish monster, Yuan, take this Xiao to that place. Okay, this little one understands. The fish monster was extremely excited. It rubbed its illusory hands and nodded vigorously. Sea Snakely hurriedly said, Taoist Xiao, do you want me to accompany you? No need. Xiao Hua waved his hand. You go with Lu to the Luai Merchant Union. Since there is a pill formula, there must be some demonic herbs, demonic fruits, and so on. You also help to take a look. Lu is not a shrewd businessman. Li covered his mouth and said, he's not a human to begin with. Xiao Hua nodded. He looked around and said, if possible, give all the sea relics in this shop to this Xiao. This Xiao has a use for them. No problem. Li said without hesitation, this one will pack it up right away. When Taoist Xiao returns, I'll give them all to you. Xiao Hua took out a Chinkuan bag and handed it to Li. He directly took the fish monster and prepared to leave the shop. The little sea shrimp waiting at the entrance of the shop hurriedly said shyly, Taoist Xiao, Grandpa and the others have gone to find a certificate for Taoist Xiao. Please wait for a moment. They really went. Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Thus, Xiao Hua simply stood inside the shop and watched Li tidy up the sea relics in the shop. On the other hand, the somewhat tyrannical shop assistant from before had long disappeared. After a while, Li tidied up all the sea relics in the shop and gave the Chinkuan bag to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua looked inside and saw that there were indeed a lot of sea relics. Thinking about how each sea relic was the life of a sea race member, Xiao Hua increasingly felt that doing these things was worth it. Xiao Hua had just received the Chinkuan bag when the old sea shrimp brought the two old sea race members back hurriedly. From the looks of it, they didn't seem to be injured at all. Xiao Hua received a fish card and carefully held it. He smiled and said, Many thanks, everyone. You can go and rest first. When this Xiao comes back, I will help you refine pills. Seeing Xiao Hua treasuring the fish card very much, the old sea shrimp and the others were quite happy. They cupped their hands and said, Thank you for everything, Taoist Xiao. Seeing the old sea shrimp and the others leave, Xiaohua also waved his hand and hurriedly took the fish monster out of the shop. After a while, the fish monster asked in a low voice, Taoist Xiao, where are you going? Fine. Xiaohua said these two words through sound transmission. You want to go to Qi? The fish monster was shocked and almost blurted out. Fortunately, he only spoke half of it and stopped. Xiaohua smiled and said, if you don't dare to go, then just point in the direction. This Xiao already knows where it is. I can ask. No, this little one will take Taoist Xiao there. Yuan clenched his teeth and said. Then, he raised his hand and a demonic cloud appeared under his feet, asking Xiaohua to fly with him. Xiaohua urged his flying technique and followed behind Yuan, flying towards the outside of Yuling Bay. Sure enough, along the way, there were many shrimp soldiers and crab generals patrolling, stopping Xiaohua from time to time. The certificate given to Xiaohua by the old sea shrimp was quite useful. Every sea race took a look at it and didn't ask much, directly letting them go. After flying over the mountain range of Yuling Bay, they arrived at the other side. Before they could get close, a hot aura hit them in the face, and a strong smell of sulfur gradually diffused in the air. Near this hot aura, there were no sea race, and the patrolling shrimp soldiers and crab generals were also gone. After flying for a while, Yuan's figure was already trembling. Obviously, he couldn't adapt to the heat here. Xiaohua said, Yuan, Chi-Chi must be in front. You don't need to get too close. This old man will go by himself. You find a suitable place to stay. After this old man comes out, I will come to find you. The fish monster stopped in midair and said very shamefully, many thanks for Taoist Zhao's sympathy. This little one really can't stand it anymore. This is a hot place. It's different from the humid life of UC race. It's normal that you can't stand it. Xiaohua smiled and waved his hand, then flew forward. The fish monster watched Xiaohua's figure fly over the foothills and fall into the valley. It quickly turned around and flew straight to the inside of Yuling Bay. The salty sea breeze swept up the moisture and fell on the fish monster's body. Only then did the fish monster let out a long sigh of relief. It didn't even transform into its human form and return to its fish form. It twisted in the air, as if it was enjoying it to the extreme. Xiaohua flew over the mountain valley, and in front of him was a sea of scarlet red mountain rocks, scarlet red sand, and also surging scarlet red lava. However, this scarlet red only covered a range of a few dozen li looking further into the valley. There was another stretch of dilapidated fences and dilapidated walls. Some dilapidated stone pillars, collapsed pavilions, and other things piled up in the valley. Many weeds and wild vines wrapped around these buildings. Xiaohua had already learned from old sea shrimp that this valley was called Drifting Pavilion thousands of years ago. It was a place where some monster race gathered. However, there was a change later on. A huge amount of magma was produced overnight, completely destroying the entire Drifting Pavilion. After the monster race left, another monster race occupied this place and changed the name of this place to Chi-Chi. As for why Yuan's expression changed when he heard about this place, it was not only because this place was hot and basically no sea race came here, but also because the monster race that occupied this place was a barbarian, a monster beast that liked to eat sea race. Yuan usually didn't have enough time to hide. Why would he come here? Xiaohua stood in midair and released his divine sense to explore. He had already seen the dried fish hanging on the mountain rock in the depths of the valley. These dried fish were not the kind that ordinary people would hang in their homes. The short ones were a few feet long, and the long ones were several zhang long. They were all dried up and shrunk to one place. It was obvious that when these barbarians hunted these sea race people, the sea race people's bodies were huge. Xiaohua secretly smiled and said, "This place is not bad." Presumably, the North Sea Dragon Palace also didn't expect Jiang Che to be hiding here. Then, Xiaohua let Jiang Sheng out. The moment Jiang Sheng came out, he immediately shrunk his neck and looked a little uncomfortable. He then looked around and asked curiously, "This is Drifting Pavilion? I'll let fellow immortal Jiang know." Xiaohua smiled and said, "This place was originally called Drifting Pavilion. Later on, because magma spewed out, Drifting Pavilion was destroyed. Now it's called Chi-Chi this." Jiang Sheng was a little hesitant. He frowned and said, "Since it's called Chi-Chi, Why did Jiang Che say it's Drifting Pavilion? How can I find Jiang Che? Anyway, this is Drifting Pavilion. Xiao Hua shrugged and replied, As for how to find Jiang Che, I don't know. However, there's a group of barbarians here who know how to forge weapons. You might as well go and ask them. All right. Jiang Sheng thought for a while and nodded. However, after flying for several zhang, he turned his head and asked, Taoist Xiao, the North Sea Dragon Palace didn't chase after us, right? No. Xiao Hua looked between the mountain rocks and casually replied, That's good. Jiang Sheng smiled and flew down the valley. -13. Chapter 39:45. At the bottom of the valley was an enormous mountain crevice. Within the mountain crevice was a space of hundreds of meters. Within this space, one after another, stone caves surrounded the crimson magma in the center. In front of the stone caves, there were many materials and large pieces of stone scattered about. At the edge of the magma, there were also some weapons submerged in the magma. Only some parts of the handles were exposed. Xiao Hua and Jiang Sheng had just approached this mountain crevice when they were immediately discovered by the demon race. They saw 5 leopards, each about 30 meters in size, holding weapons as they flew over from the left side of the magma on a demon cloud. The leopard in front was holding a dried fish in its hand and was biting it with all its might. Its sharp fangs flashed with a blood-red color. Stop! One of the leopards shouted loudly. Is this a place where you can come? Jiang Sheng turned his head to look at Xiao Hua and smiled. He flew forward a few steps, cupped his hands, and said, Gigi Pai. Xiao Hua was stunned and blinked his eyes. He could be considered proficient in the demon language and dragon language, but he actually didn't understand what Jiang Sheng was saying. However, since Jiang Sheng and Jiang Che had arranged to meet here, and Jiang Sheng didn't bring any keepsake, presumably this strange demon language was also what they had agreed on, right? As expected, when the leopard heard Jiang Sheng speak, its expression changed slightly. The leopard that was eating the dried fish threw away the dried fish in its hand and flew a few steps closer. It also spoke in a similar demon language, but the speed of its speech was even more hurried. The 2 demons spoke a few words, and then they both stretched out their claws and stuck them together. The claws slightly touched a few times, and the rhythm was also different. Then, the leopard raised its head and looked at Xiao Hua. On that sinister and strange leopard face, a trace of a smile was squeezed out. Seeing this, Xiao Hua also nodded and returned a smile at him. The leopard raised its hand. It was still that strange demon language, which seemed to mean, please. Jiang Sheng transmitted his voice in a low voice, Spiritual Master Xiao, please follow me. Okay. Xiao Hua knew that Jiang Sheng was being cautious, so he also sent a sound transmission and flew down with Jiang Sheng. The other few barbarians also gave way. Their faces were also filled with respect. The leopard in front led Xiao Hua and Jiang Sheng into a cave. The inside of the cave was even hotter than the outside. Several streams of magma seeped in from the 4 corners of the cave, then flowed through several grooves and fell into a furnace similar to a cauldron. This furnace was square in shape, and strange demon characters were engraved on it. There were many patterns in the demon characters, and those patterns were actually filled with the splendor of the moon and stars. Seeing this, Xiao Hua knew that this was a tool used by the demi-human race and couldn't help but take a few more glances at it. However, he could see that there were only some raw materials in the furnaces, presumably still being refined. When he thought about the weapons in the lava outside the cave, Xiao Hua lost interest in taking a closer look. The strength of these barbarians was limited, and they could only use the lava to refine weapons. They had no value to him as a reference. Naturally, there were also some barbarians following behind Xiao Hua. When they saw Xiao Hua looking at the furnace, they frowned and looked at each other with dissatisfaction in their eyes. After passing through this cave, they arrived at an even larger cave. Inside, there were some weapons commonly seen by the sea race, and they seemed to be of good quality. However, Xiao Hua's gaze didn't even stop. He directly looked into the cave and saw another deep cave. At this moment, there were several larger barbarians standing in front of the deep cave. The leader of the barbarians walked forward and whispered a few words. Unexpectedly, he also spoke in strange demon characters. The barbarians guarding the deep cave also raised their heads in surprise. They looked at Jiang Sheng and then at Xiaohua. After a slight hesitation, they muttered a few words before turning around and entering the deep cave. Xiaohua looked at the dark cave and didn't release his divine sense. He then lowered his head and looked at his feet. Below his feet was a layer of magma that had cooled down. It was ochre red in color, and there were some fire-type yuan qi emitting from it, causing the entire cave to be scorching hot. At this moment, Jiang Sheng turned his head and smiled at Xiaohua, as if indicating for Xiaohua to wait a moment. Xiaohua also smiled and nodded. He didn't mind. After a while, the barbarian came out and waved the large black fork in his hand. Go in. Damn it, I finally understood a few words. Xiaohua cursed inwardly as he followed Jiang Sheng into the deep cave. The deep cave was indeed large. There was a huge stone table with several strange weapons placed on top of it. At the head of the stone table, there was a barbarian that was over 10 zhang tall sitting coldly on a stone bed. Next to it were several other barbarians with graceful figures. They were probably female and were obediently accompanying it. Next to the stone table, there were also a dozen or so barbarians. They were all staring at Xiaohua and Jiang Sheng with fiendish expressions. Gigi Gugu. The barbarian opened its mouth and spoke in a difficult demon character. Jiang Sheng took a few steps forward and also spoke a few words. Then, the barbarian was slightly stunned, as if it didn't dare to believe it. Similarly, the dozen or so barbarians were also stunned. Some of them even looked at the barbarians that had attracted Xiaohua and Jiang Sheng in disbelief. What did you say? The barbarian was a little anxious and finally spoke in a demon character that Xiaohua could understand. I didn't say anything. Jiang Sheng turned his head and glanced at Xiaohua. He said coldly, I already said that I am a dragon general of the North Sea Dragon Palace. My subordinates have already surrounded this place. All of you, leave behind the things used to forge weapons and hurry up and get out of here. Otherwise, don't blame me for killing all of you. Don't you think that Taoist master Xiao? Jiang Sheng's tone was gloomy. The gaze he used to look at Xiaohua was also sharp and even had a hint of ridicule. You. Xiaohua listened to Jiang Sheng's baffling words and couldn't help but be stunned. Just like those barbarians from before, when he looked at Jiang Sheng's gaze again, Xiaohua suddenly understood. After all this fuss, he had been led by the nose by Jiang Sheng. There was no Jiang Che in the flowing lightning residence. Even now, Jiang Sheng still didn't believe him. Damn it! Without waiting for Xiaohua to say anything, the leader of the barbarians roared angrily and swung his arm. The female barbarians around him were immediately sent flying. The leader of the barbarians pounced towards Xiaohua like a flying mountain. The two claws made a woo-woo, whistling sound and instantly slapped in front of Xiaohua's eyes. You're sick. Xiaohua coldly spat out 2 words at Jiang Sheng. His left hand waved in midair, and the wishful steel staff appeared in his hand. Boom! There was a loud noise, and it hit the claws of the barbarians. The claws on the head of the barbarians were very powerful. In the loud noise, a line of sparks appeared. The leader of the barbarians was actually not sent flying by the wishful steel staff. Moreover, the leader of the barbarians actually used the huge force of the wishful steel staff to flash in midair. The thick leopard tail made a woo sound again and swept towards Xiaohua's head. Xiaohua urged his magic power, and the air waves in the nearby space surged. Xiaohua slightly flicked his finger, and a spell was cast. A fist-sized earth shield immediately appeared in front of him. Puff! In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, the tail of the flying leopard hit the earth shield. A thick crack appeared on the earth shield, but it didn't shatter. However, the flying leopard's tail drooped down. It was clearly injured by the counterattack of the earth shield. Roar! At this moment, the dozens of barbarians next to the stone table roared and rushed towards Xiaohua and Jiang Sheng respectively. Xiaohua did not face them at all. After blocking the attack of the leader of the barbarians, he sneered and urged the fire escape technique. Shua! There was a light sound, but a string of flames was born and his figure disappeared from the distance. The barbarians that rushed towards Xiaohua were startled. They looked at each other, and two of them turned around and chased out of the deep hole, while the rest rushed towards Jiang Sheng. Roar! Xiaohua appeared outside the mountain valley. Hearing the faint dragon roar in the mountain valley, he snorted coldly and flew towards the top of the mountain valley without stopping. Those dozens of barbarians were only in the light-gathering realm and could not be considered as powerful experts. However, the leader of the barbarians had the strength of the Enlightenment Star realm. If Jiang Sheng was at his peak, he would be able to put up a fight. As for now, Jiang Sheng was already injured, so how could he be a match for these barbarians? However, this had nothing to do with Xiaohua. Xiaohua wanted to help Jiang Sheng with good intentions, but he didn't expect that Jiang Sheng would make a fool out of him like this. Xiaohua, who looked very reckless, was actually so scheming. It really made Xiaohua's heart cold. Xiaohua's divine sense swept through the bottom of the mountain valley. Two barbarians led a few weaker ones out. Xiaohua originally wanted to teach these monsters a lesson, but when he saw the scarlet mountain rocks nearby, he sighed. His figure moved, turning into a rainbow and flying into the sky. Then, Xiaohua waved his large sleeve and swept up Yuan, who was standing far away from the mountain rocks, and disappeared in a moment. Where did the Dragon Palace Marine soldiers come from? Then, where did that powerful human fly off to? Dozens of barbarians flew up the mountain valley with weapons in hand. Their gazes were all empty. Not only did they not see Xiaohua's figure, the shrimp soldiers and crab generals were also nowhere to be seen. The leader of the barbarians released his divine sense and looked around for a moment. His eyes turned a few times, and he instructed the barbarians behind him, "Go to the Feather Spirit Palace and find out if the second prince of the Dragon Palace wants to go back on his word again. Oh, and while you're at it, see what happened in Feather Spirit Bay recently." Yes, the dozens of barbarians scattered and flew away, disappearing in a moment. The two barbarians who had chased after Xiaohua were still not at ease. They once again circled the entire mountain valley before descending into the mountain valley. Xiaohua's figure landed in Feather Spirit Bay. Yuan shook his head, looked left and right, and said with a smile, "Taoist, have you finished your business?" Yes, it's already finished. Bring this Xiao to Yao Shi." Xiaohua nodded, his face not showing any abnormality. "Senior, please follow this little one." Seeing that Xiaohua was so serious about his promise, the fish monster was overjoyed. It carefully flew in front of Xiaohua, bringing him into the depths of Feather Spirit Bay. While Xiaohua was flying, he was thinking about how to refine pills for old sea shrimp and the others. At this time, he was not in the mood to be angry about Jiang Sheng's distrust. After all, from the beginning to the end, Xiaohua was helping Jiang Sheng with his own wishful thinking. It was normal for Jiang Sheng to be suspicious, but Xiaohua helping others to this extent was indeed a bit shameful. -13. Chapter 39:46. Now that he thought about it, ever since Xiaohua saved Jiang Sheng in the Yazi arena, Xiaohua had never let Jiang Sheng see the fight between him and the North Sea Dragon Palace. How could Jiang Sheng trust the few names that Xiaohua mentioned? Even if Xiaohua escaped with Jiang Sheng still saw the fight between Xiaohua and the North Sea Dragon Palace. If it was Jiang Sheng, he could also see it as the North Sea Dragon Palace playing hard to get. Jiang Sheng thought that Xiaohua was bait to capture Jiang Che, Jiang Hong, and the people of the Heavenly Abode River. This was very normal. Since that was the case, what Jiang Sheng said to Xiaohua earlier should also be a test. In other words, Jiang Hong was not captured by the North Sea Dragon Palace. Perhaps it was because of this that Jiang Sheng saw the flaw. And it was also because of this flaw that Xiaohua was relieved. As long as Jiang Hong was fine, the matter of the Heavenly Abode River had nothing to do with Xiaohua, especially since Jiang Sheng drowned Longevity Town. He deserved to die. Xiaohua pulled himself away and left without the slightest bit of hesitation. After flying past some shops, Xiaohua frowned slightly. Everywhere he looked, there were large and small puddles. Some of these puddles were empty, and some of them were floating on the surface of the water. Some of these puddles were filled with filth, and some of them had some members of the sea race floating on them. However, these puddles were emitting an unpleasant odor. This odor was somewhat stinky and rotten. Xiaohua felt that it was very strange. Looking at the end of the puddles, there were some simple origin arrays. Xiao Hua's eyes could not see through them. Although Yuan was flying in front, his eyes never left Xiao Hua's face. Seeing Xiao Hua frown, he hurriedly smiled and said, Taoist, this is the place where the sea race like me live. This place is filled with seawater brought in by the Feather Spirit Palace. Normally, it is changed every half a year. If it was the place where the ordinary sea race lived, there would not be an unpleasant smell. However, if it was the place where the old sea shrimp lived, because of their injuries, the seawater would inevitably be contaminated with the smell. The seawater that is changed every half a year does not require sea crystals. If you want to change it normally, you need to pay a lot of sea crystals, so, no harm. Xiao Hua smiled and said, this old man will not smell it. Yes, enlightened master. It's not far ahead. Yuan pointed at a place protected by an origin formation in the distance. In fact, there was no need for Yuan to say anything. Outside the formation, Old Shrimp and the other old members of the Sea Clan were already waiting there. Seeing Xiao Hua coming over, all of them had smiles on their faces. After the old members of the Sea Clan entered the formation, the other old members of the Sea Clan welcomed them. Taoist Xiao, please. Old Sea Shrimp very respectfully invited Xiao Hua to enter the origin formation. In front of Xiao Hua were dozens of old sea creatures with different appearances. Before Xiao Hua even opened his mouth, these old sea creatures all slightly bowed, carefully greeting Xiao Hua with smiling faces. Xiao Hua raised his hand, saluted everyone, and said with a smile, Gentlemen, has General Lu returned? Old Sea Shrimp hastily walked out, raised his claws and said with a smile, Old men, don't surround Taoist Xiao. Since Taoist Xiao is already here, he will definitely help us if he can. I still want to let you rest for a while and wait for you to return. All right. As they spoke, the dozens of old sea race members dispersed. However, they didn't go far, and their gazes were fixed on Xiao Hua. Taoist Xiao, this way please. Old Sea Shrimp raised his hand and invited Xiao Hua to walk towards the center of the origin formation. The interior of the origin formation was about a few li in size. It looked like an island with seawater all around. There were some trees on the island, and there was actually a pavilion among the trees. Near the pavilion, there were also some clear and melodious chirping sounds of birds. Xiao Hua flew across the seawater and landed on the island. He looked around and said with a smile, This Yaoshi really lives up to its name. Indeed. Old Sea Shrimp said with a smile, This Yaoshi is a famous place to receive guests in Yuling Bay. Many humans like to rest here. When I came over, a few Confucian cultivators had just left this place. General Lu is very considerate. Xiao Hua understood. So this Yaoshi wasn't what he had imagined. It was the place where Old Sea Shrimp and the other sea creatures lived. Walking into the pavilion, there was a stone table, a few jade chairs, and a few small cups placed on top of the stone table. The cups were filled with some light green liquid, and Xiao Hua couldn't tell what it was. Taoist Xiao, please take a seat. Old Sea Shrimp respectfully invited Xiao Hua to sit down. He raised his hand and picked up a cup and placed it in front of Xiao Hua. This is Yuling Bay's ice rain liquid. It is produced from the ice spring at the bottom of the North Sea. It is said that it is useful for the cultivation of humans. Xiao Hua sighed. He took the cup and said, Why are you so polite? Presumably, this thing will cost a lot of sea crystals. It is enough for me to know your intentions. Old Sea Shrimp said with a smile, There is a saying in the human race. No one will blame you for being polite. We are all vulgar sea creatures. We don't understand the etiquette of the hidden, immortal continent. Normally, we would only learn it after seeing others do it. As long as Taoist doesn't get tired of it, we will be satisfied. Forget it. Xiao Hua raised the cup, raised his head and swallowed the ice rain liquid into his mouth. As the ice rain liquid entered his stomach, an ice-cold yuan qi came out from the ice rain liquid and rushed into Xiao Hua's meridians. At the same time, Xiao Hua's body felt refreshed, as if all the pores on his body were about to open. Not bad. Xiao Hua said with a smile. Ice rain liquid really lives up to its reputation. If Taoist likes it, then use it all. Old Sea Shrimp hurriedly put the other cups in front of Xiao Hua. These things are useless to us sea creatures. Xiaohua bitterly smiled. This ice rain liquid was admittedly not bad, but that was only for ordinary cultivators. The amount of yuan qi within this ice rain liquid was simply insignificant to Xiaohua. The only thing that could make Xiaohua praise it was the momentary feeling and nothing more. Looking at old sea shrimp, who was very eager, Xiaohua waved his hand and received the ice rain liquid. He said with a smile, "I appreciate your intentions. I have no use for this thing now. Let's talk about it later." Good, good. The old sea shrimp smiled and chatted with Xiaohua for a while. Xiaohua also asked about the feather spirit bay with interest. At this time, Xiaohua knew that the old sea shrimp and the other soldiers of the North Sea Dragon Palace were born in the sea. However, because of the war, they were sent to guard Yuling Bay because of their meritorious service. Yuling Bay was naturally a peaceful place, and there would be no more war. However, after these veterans retired, they could no longer cut through the wind and waves and return to the Northern Sea territory. They could only spend the rest of their lives here. In fact, for these old sea creatures, as long as there was seawater, anywhere was their home. However, they were injured and in pain every day. Usually, it was inevitable that they would think of their former carefree life and miss their former sea. As for Lu, he was just as Xiaohua thought. He was a loyal sea creature general. When he saw that his subordinates' injuries could not be healed and they were howling every day, he took out the sea crystals he had accumulated to treat their injuries. The sea relics in the shop were also killed by him using sea crystals to invite soldiers he was familiar with. As for old sea shrimp and the other sea creatures, they naturally lived in the puddles that Xiaohua saw when he walked over. The fishy smell was emitted by the pus and blood on their bodies. "How many sea creatures like you are in Yuling Bay?" Xiaohua asked with a frown. "At least 100,000. Old sea shrimp answered without hesitation. Xiaohua was puzzled and asked curiously, "How come there are so many? Then, why do you all have to live in Yuling Bay? Won't you return to the Northern Sea?" Old sea shrimp smiled bitterly and said, "Daoist Xiao, you don't know." However, before he could explain, a sharp voice called out from afar, "Daoist Xiao, have you returned? Daoist Xiao, have you returned?" Then, a yuan shun hurriedly swept over and landed on Xiaohua. The voice sounded again, "Quick, Daoist Xiao, Lu has encountered trouble in the flowing merchant union." Xiaohua stared blankly. He didn't understand why Lu had encountered trouble in the flowing merchant union and why Drip was looking for him. However, he didn't hesitate. His figure turned into a rainbow and flew to the sea where the yuan shun formation was and said, "Quick, let's go." On the way, Drip told him what had happened. In fact, it wasn't a big deal. Today, there was a small auction in the flowing merchant union that was similar to the Yazi auction house. After participating, Lu came across a beast skin and bevan that had a pill formula recorded. Coincidentally, the Apricot Forest Medicine Shop also participated in this auction. The Apricot Forest Medicine Shop was determined to get the beast skin and bevan. Of course, Lu wouldn't give in. The two sides started to bid and the beast skin and bevan reached an extremely high price. The Apricot Forest Medicine Shop obviously didn't believe that Lu could take out so many sea crystals. Therefore, they took out their Chinkuan bag and asked for the sea crystals immediately after bidding. This was contrary to the auction rules of the Flowing Merchant Union, so the Flowing Merchant Union didn't agree. However, the Flowing Merchant Union reminded Lu that if he couldn't take out so many sea crystals after the auction, not only would the beast skin and bevan belong to the Apricot Forest Medicine Shop, Lu would also have to pay a large amount of sea crystals to the Apricot Forest Medicine Shop. Of course, Lu didn't have so many sea crystals. He hurriedly asked Drip to come back and find old sea shrimp and the others to raise the sea crystals. Drip was well aware of how many sea crystals old sea shrimp and the other sea tribes had. She knew that these sea tribes definitely wouldn't be able to gather so many sea crystals. Therefore, she wanted to find Xiaohua as soon as she entered the Yuanshan formation. After all, the human race Dao cultivators who could participate in the Yazi auction house would definitely have sea crystals in their Chinkuan bags. After hearing Drip's explanation, Xiaohua's heart was also relieved. After he asked about the price of the beast skin and bevan, his heart was completely at ease. He smiled and said, "You don't have to worry about the price. Even if it was 10 times more expensive, this old man can still take it out." That's good, that's good. Drip was actually a little panicked. Now that she heard it, she was really grateful and said, Taoist Master, this matter. Originally, we see tribes had to deal with it properly, but I didn't expect that Taoist Master would have to take out the sea crystals. This one doesn't know what to say. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, My human race has a saying, send Buddha to the Western paradise, send people to their home. Since this old man has the spare energy, this old man will do it alone. But we are monster race. Drip wouldn't say this sentence normally, but facing such a compassionate Taoist master Xiao, Drip admired him from the bottom of her heart and couldn't help but say it. -13. Chapter 39:47. If the human race doesn't have humanity, then what's the difference between them and beasts? If the demon race has a human heart, then what's the difference between them and the human race? Xiaohua replied with a smile. AI. Drop sighed in shame. Back then, I also devoured a lot of humans. Now that I think about it, lay down the butcher's knife and become a Buddha. As long as you start today. Xiaohua replied indifferently. Dee nodded slightly and pointed to a cave in the stone wall in front of her and said, Here it is. Xiaohua looked at the cave. It was similar to the Yazi auction house, but the scale was a lot smaller. Even the words Continuous Merchant Union above the cave was a lot inferior. Xiaohua and Drop landed. Drop took out a palm-sized jade tablet and handed it to the demon race guarding the cave, then pointed at Xiaohua and said, This is the honored guest of my general. He heard that the Continuous Merchant Union has the rare treasure of the 1,000 Demons' sacred realm. He was very happy and specially came to take a look. The demon race of the Continuous Merchant Union checked the jade tablet and returned it to Drop, then bowed and said, Immortal friend, please, not bad. Xiaohua followed Drop into the cave and said with a smile, The guards of this Continuous Merchant Union are much better than the Yazi auction house. Moreover, they actually let us in during the auction. Hee. Drop covered his mouth and said, It's just some superficial words. The Continuous Merchant Union already knew that I went out to look for sea crystals. Of course, the Luo-E Merchant Alliance is much better than the Yazi auction. Although the scale is small, they treat all the members of the Sea clan equally. Just as Qi said this, a voice sounded from inside, Fellow Immortal, the entire auction is over. I've been waiting for you for the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. The other immortal friends also accompanied me and waited for you. If you can't take out 100,000 sea crystals, then just say it directly. What are you pretending for? In fact, although I am a human, I am also a person with a reputation in the Yuling Bay. I also know a little about what you are like. It is impossible for you to take out 100,000 sea crystals. For the sake of the Continuous Merchant Union's face, and for the sake of a mortal friend, I have patiently waited for so long. If we were in the hidden immortal continent, I would have already become hostile. Sigh, forget it. You probably can't take out 10,000 sea crystals anyway. You might as well take out 5,000. My apricot forest medicine store has been taken care of by the immortals of the Sea Clan in Yuling Bay, and the Luo Merchant Union has been good to us as well. My apricot forest medicine store will bid for the pill formula and Bay one at the price of 100,000 sea crystals. I. Even though Xinglin Drugstore's words were arrogant, they were reasonable. Lu did not know how to respond. Xiaohua's figure flew into the auction house and laughed brightly. Who said that General Lu doesn't have sea crystals? Oh? Spiritual Master Xiao? Xiaohua's figure still hadn't appeared, but the crowd of sea race and human race in the auction hall all turned their heads in surprise, wanting to see who had arrived. At the same time, a voice that Xiaohua was very familiar with called out in astonishment. Moreover, Xiaohua understood that this voice was definitely not Lu's. When Xiaohua's gaze followed the voice, he couldn't help but be amused. It turned out that the one standing in the middle of the auction wasn't another demon, but the demon clan Xingpo whom Xiaohua had met before. Needless to say, the Luo-E Merchant Union must be related to Yingpo's clansmen. Xiaohua landed in front of everyone's gaze and looked around the auction hall. This auction hall was only a few hundred feet in size and looked rather simple. There were some demon clan and human race sitting in a few simple origin arrays. However, these humans and demon clan didn't cover their faces. The The shock on everyone's faces fell into Xiao Hua's eyes. Xiao Hua slightly nodded towards Pua and walked to Lu's side. He took out a Qingkuan pouch from his Taoist robe and handed it to Lu. General Lu, this is your sea crystal. All right. Lu took the sea crystal with a grateful expression like Lu's. Spiritual Master Xiao? Across from Lu, a handsome Confucian scholar held a folding fan in his hand. He frowned and said, "This one is Zhang Yong of Yu Province's Nanyang Zhang clan. Greetings to Spiritual Master Xiao. Even though this one doesn't know which province Spiritual Master Xiao is in charge of, even though our Confucian Tao is different, we are all humans. Why is Spiritual Master Xiao helping the sea race? If this matter were to spread to the hidden immortal continent, Spiritual Master Xiao and Spiritual Master Zhao's country would have a bad reputation, right? Yu Province's Nanyang Zhang clan?" Xiao Hua slightly pondered and immediately realized. Isn't Medical Saint Zhang Zhongjing from Yu Province's Nanyang Zhang clan? This Zhang Yong is naturally the descendant of Medical Saint. Xiao Hua hurriedly raised his hand and said, "So it's Medical Saint Zhang Zhongjing's descendant. This one has been disrespectful. That's all because of my ancestors' great reputation. My ancestors' medical skills have long been lost in the hands of us juniors. This one is ashamed." Zhang Yong saw that Xiao Hua knew his clan's reputation and was slightly proud. He kept his folding fan and cupped his hands. Even though he didn't say anything, his smile already revealed a kind of victory in his hands. He knew that Xiao Hua had to give Zhang clan face. "Spiritual Master." Lu also understood and said with a bitter smile, "Since that's the case, there's no need to make things difficult for Spiritual Master. This one doesn't want these things." However, without waiting for Xiao Hua to speak, Pu in the distance smiled and said, "So General Lu is acquainted with Spiritual Master Xiao. Why didn't you say so earlier?" "Sorry, fellow Immortal Zhang. My Luoyi Merchant Alliance won't be bidding for this item." Zhang Yong and all the other humans and demons in the auction house were stunned. Zhang Yong shouted, "Fellow Immortal, if this item wasn't taken out, then it's fine. But now that the auction is over, you're saying that you won't be bidding. Where's the credibility of your Luoyi Merchant Alliance? In the future, who will come to the Luoyi Merchant Alliance to bid for things? Your Luoyi Merchant Alliance can't compare to Yazi Auction House and Zhaixing Lu. With this matter, I'm afraid that in the future, there won't be any humans or even demons coming to the Luoyi Merchant Alliance to bid for things, right?" "Hee, fellow Immortal, you don't have to be like this." Xiao Hua smiled and raised his hand, saying, "This one knows that the auction house should let people take a look at the items before bidding, right? This one hasn't seen this item before. Fellow Immortal, can you let this one take a look?" Of course. Ingper originally wanted to give this item to Xiao Hua. Hearing Xiao Hua's words, he naturally raised his hand and waved the beast skin and Bei One. The two items landed in front of Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua took the beast skin and Bei One. When he turned around, the beast skin shook slightly and instantly kept it into the space. He then handed Bei One to Lu Dao. "General Lu, this one doesn't have any elemental thoughts. I'm afraid I can't take a look." "Take a look." Lu didn't know what Xiao Hua was planning to do. After taking Bei One, he heard Xiao Hua's voice transmission. The corner of his eyes twitched a few times. He activated his elemental thoughts and pretended to look at Bei One. He said, "Where's the beast skin? Let this one take a look again." At this moment, Xiao Hua gave the beast skin to Lu and returned Bei One to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua took Bei One and kept it into the space. Lu looked at the beast's skin and pondered for a moment. He nodded and said, "Daoist Xiao, these two items are indeed what this one wants. Sigh, if it was someone else, then so be it." Xiao Hua reached out and took the beast's skin. Bei Wen also appeared in his hand. He then sighed and said, "But Yu Zhou's Nanyang's Zhang clan is the descendant of the medical saint. This item, it's better to give it to them." "Oh, all right." Lu hesitated for a moment and replied, "But 5,000 sea crystals? We still have to compensate Xinglin Drugstore." Xiao Hua said without hesitation, "If we didn't interfere, how could Xinglin Drugstore spend so many sea crystals? But just for this, we still have to compensate them with 5,000 sea crystals." "Yes," Lu replied. He took out 5,000 sea crystals from his Qingkuan bracelet. Xiao Hua took it and gave it to Zhang Yong along with the beast skin and Bei one. This happiness came too suddenly. Zhang Yong was caught unprepared. But looking at the beast skin and Bei one, Zhang Yong clenched his teeth. Buying these two items for 95,000 sea crystals was indeed not worth it. He originally wanted to take Lu's sea crystals and then bargain with Luoyi Business Alliance. But Xiaohua was so generous that he couldn't open his mouth anymore. Zhang Yong could only take the two items. He took out a Chinquan bag from his bosom and gave it to Ing Po along with the 5,000 sea crystals. He smiled bitterly and said, "Taoist friend, here is 75,000 sea crystals. As for the remaining 20,000 sea crystals, when this one returns to Xing Lin drugstore, I will immediately send someone to deliver it." Hee, no problem, no problem. Ing Po took the Chinquan bag and said with a smile, "This one believes in Xing Lin drugstore's reputation." Good. Zhang Yong nodded. He then cupped his hands towards Xiaohua and said, "Many thanks, Taoist friend Xiao. If you have time, come to this one Xing Lin drugstore. This one will welcome you with open arms." "No problem," Xiaohua replied with a smile. "If I have time, this one will definitely pay a visit." Fellow Taoists, Ing Po raised his hand and said, "This auction ends here. Fellow Taoists, please come again next time." The group of demons and humans all left. Ing Po sealed the entrance of the auction hall. He turned around and bowed. "Greetings, Taoist Xiao. Rise." Xiaohua helped Ing Po up and said with a smile, "It has been several decades since we parted on Yaodai Mountain. Fellow Taoist, how have you been?" "It is all thanks to fellow Taoist," Ing Po said with a smile. "With fellow Taoists' primeval stones, this one and my clansmen were able to open this Luo-E merchant union. Our lives have been passable." Haha, fellow Taoists' words are becoming more and more like my human race. Xiaohua laughed loudly. Ing Po looked at Lu Heli and said with a smile, "Taoist Xiao, can you come with this one for a chat?" "Of course." Xiaohua nodded. He then said to Lu Heli, "You all can go back first. This one will go back in a moment." "Yes, Taoist," Lu Heli replied. He took out the Chinquan bag and was about to return it to Xiaohua. Xiaohua said with a smile, "This one arbitrarily made you lose 5,000 sea crystals. The primeval stones in the bag can be considered as compensation." Ing Po smiled and took out 5,000 sea crystals from Zhang Yong's Chinquan ring. He handed it to Lu and said, "Wool comes from a sheep's back. Fellow Taoist allowed this one to earn 80,000 sea crystals. Take these 5,000 sea crystals as my thanks." This, Lu was at a loss. Beside him, Lu Heli said, "Since Taoist Xiao is very close with the Luoyi Merchant Union, you can take it." "Thank you, fellow Taoist." Lu took the sea crystals and returned the Chinquan bag to Xiaohua. Xiaohua did not say anything. He took the Chinquan bag and watched as the two sea rays flew out of the auction hall. -13. Chapter 39:48. "Taoist master, please." Ing Po raised his hand and invited Xiaohua forward. Xiaohua smiled and said, "Don't be so polite with me. You lead the way." "Yes." Ing Po smiled faintly and led Xiaohua into the auction field. They arrived at a rather large hall. This hall was similar to what the human race would normally see, but it was filled with large pieces of gravel. Ing Po said to the demon on the side of the hall, "Go and invite the 9 elders here. Tell them that Taoist Master Xiao is here." "Taoist Master Xiao?" The demon was startled. He looked at Xiaohua with a different gaze and hurriedly left. 9 elders? Xiaohua stepped into the hall and said with a smile, "Are they the elders of your clan?" Ing Po nodded and said, "Yes." Then, Ing Po took out a jade chair from the heaven and earth ring and placed it on the side of the stone. He raised his hand and said, "Taoist Master, please sit." "Okay." Xiaohua knew that this was the place where the human race's honored guests sat, so he sat down without hesitation. He then looked at Ing Po sitting on the main seat next to him. Xiaohua suddenly woke up and cupped his hands. "Oh, congratulations, Taoist Master. You are now the head of a clan?" "Taoist Master Xiao, you must be joking." Ing Po smiled. "My clan is a small clan in the Thousand Demon Sacred Realm. Being the head of a clan is nothing. Moreover, my position as the head of a clan is related to Taoist Master Xiao." Oh, could it be? Xiao Hua already understood. Ingpu explained, Taoist Master Xiao is right. It is because I made a few transactions with Taoist Master and Black Wind Mountain Range. My clan's head just happened to be in trouble, so I stood out. Haha, Taoist Master Xiao is prepared and has the ability to seize opportunities. Xiao Hua said with a smile. This has nothing to do with me. Ingpa smiled and took out some rare fruits from the heaven and earth ring for Xiao Hua to taste. After a while, he probed, Taoist Master Xiao, after making a few transactions with Black Wind Mountain Range. When I was preparing to go there, I received the news that Black Wind Mountain Range was being attacked by Immortal Palace. I also heard Taoist Master Zhao's fame of defeating Immortal Palace. I am very worried for Taoist Master Xiao. I even secretly went to see Black Wind Mountain Range. That place is completely different from before. But I really didn't expect that Taoist Master Xiao would suddenly come to Yuling Bay today. It's nothing, Xiao Hua said with a smile. I had an appointment with a fellow Taoist, so I came here, but I didn't run into him. Therefore, this Xiao is preparing to return. Xiao Hua roughly explained everything that he could say. In the end, he smiled and said, if I didn't see it with my own eyes, how could I have thought that the Luo E Merchant Union was actually fellow immortals? Hee. It seems like fellow immortal is fated to follow me. Otherwise, why would you still come to my Luo Merchant Alliance after several rejections? Ingpa laughed and said, if fellow immortal wants any Bay 1, elixirs, or pill formulas, I can ask my clansmen to find them. When he heard up to here, Xiao Hua had an idea in his heart, and he probed. Fellow immortal, I'll ask you something. Please go ahead, fellow immortal. Ingpa replied with a smile. Earlier, you said that you obtained information about the Black Wind Mountain Range. Xiao Hua said in a low voice. So, your Luo Merchant Union has a certain source of information in the hidden immortal continent? Of course. Ingpa nodded. For Zhaixing Lu, Li Lai Trading Company, and my Luo E Merchant Union, information is sometimes like sea crystals. Only by having a source of information all over the hidden immortal continent can we find business opportunities. However, my Luo E Merchant Union has only been established for a short period of time, and we haven't done enough in this aspect. A lot of information is bought with vitality stones. So it's like this. Xiao Hua pinched his chin, and his mind spun rapidly. Then, he said something shocking. Fellow immortal, if this Xiao manages this Luo E Merchant Union with you, will your Luo E Merchant Union be able to develop very quickly? What did fellow immortal say? Ingpu was shocked, and he didn't know how to answer. After a moment, Ingpa said with a bitter smile, fellow immortal Xiao, this Xiao knows that your cultivation is profound, and there are also a lot of vitality stones in your Qinkuan bag. However, not to mention that for my Luo E Merchant Union to develop, the amount of vitality stones that fellow immortal thinks is far beyond what fellow immortal thinks. This Xiao doesn't think that fellow immortal can take it out. If fellow immortal wants to cooperate with my Luo E Merchant Union with just these vitality stones, I'm afraid it's impossible. Of course, Xiao Hua said with a smile. This Luo E Merchant Union belongs to fellow immortal and your clansmen. This Xiao definitely doesn't have any covetous thoughts. This Xiao just wants to cooperate with fellow immortal and be able to obtain information about the hidden immortal continent from your Luo E Merchant Union. And even information about the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm and the Western Paradise. Fellow immortal, you think too highly of this Xiao. Ingpa didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How far does my Luo E Merchant Union have to develop to be able to provide so much information for fellow immortal Xiao? Why not? Xiao Hua said with a smile. As long as the Luo E Merchant Union cooperates with this Xiao will let you broaden your horizons. How is that possible? If Xiao Hua wasn't Ingpo's benefactor, Ingpu would have already driven him away. How could a Taoist cultivator know the twists and turns of running a merchant union, even if he could defeat perfected Lord Qingyuan? However, before Ingpo could say anything else, 9 demon clan members who looked similar to Ingpo came in from the outside. Ingpo stood up and introduced with a smile, Elders, this is the Taoist Master Xiao that I mentioned to the elders earlier. If it wasn't for his help, I'm afraid it wouldn't be so easy for us to establish the merchant union. Since Taoist Master Xiao has come to visit, I invite the elders to come and meet him." The 9 elders were different from Ingpu. Some of them looked enthusiastic, while some looked cold. However, Xiaohua didn't care. One by one, he returned the greeting. His etiquette was very considerate. However, seeing that the 9 elders of the Yingpa clan were all in Yuling Bay, Xiaohua was a little surprised. "Elders, please take a seat." Yingpa sat down first and said to the 9 elders. The 9 elders sat on different pieces of gravel. Rather than saying that they were sitting, it was better to say that they were lying down. They looked very comfortable. Yingpu looked at Xiaohua, thought for a moment, and said, "Elders, Taoist Master Xiao has done a favor for our clan. He came to find me today because he has something important to discuss with me. Since all the elders are here, I would like to hear your opinions." With that, Yingpa told them that Xiaohua wanted to cooperate with the Merchant Union and obtained information from the Merchant Union. An elder waited for Yingpa to finish speaking, then waved his hand and said, "Although Taoist Master Xiao has done a favor for our clan, this Merchant Union belongs to our clan. When we established it, we didn't plan to cooperate with anyone. Besides, our clan no longer has a place to stand in the 1,000-demon sacred realm. This Merchant Union is our clan's last hope. The human clan has a saying, 'How can we allow others to sleep beside our bed?' I don't think it's appropriate." That's right. If Taoist Master Xiao wants information, he can exchange it with primordial stones. Why do we have to cooperate? Humans are humans. It's hard to get rid of their greedy hearts. Originally, they wanted to make a deal with our clan, but now that they see our merchant union prospering, they want to interfere. In the end, they want to swallow the entire merchant union for themselves. This kind of thing, I've seen many times. Xiaohua smiled but didn't say anything. After all, what the elders said was true. Everyone had their own thoughts, not to mention the difference between the human race and the Yao race. It was normal for these Yao race that he had never met before to doubt him. Hee. Yingpa smiled and said to Xiaohua, "Fellow Taoist, as you can see, although I'm the clan leader, many things need to be unanimously decided by the elders. I've already told you about this situation before." Xiaohua stood up, raised his hand, and took out a universe bracelet. He casually handed it to an elder beside him and said, "Fellow Taoist, take a look at this first, then you can make a decision later." This is. That elder was a bit hesitant. He looked at Yingpa and the other demons, but still took it. Xiaohua continued. "This Xiao knows that fellow Taoists have misgivings. After all, this is the first time we've met. Moreover, although Yingpa trusts this Xiao, after all, he represents the interests of the clan. There are many things." Just as Xiaohua was speaking, the clan leader of the demon clan cried out in alarm, his face showing an inconceivable expression. Hee. Xiaohua wasn't surprised and continued. Yingpa has many things to consider from the clan's interests. He can't make decisions on his own. This old man hasn't seen Yingpa much, but I know that he's a genius in business. However, what he lacks is the conditions to make the merchant union bigger. This Xiao has never been interested in the merchant union. My hope for the merchant union is some information. Of course, if you want to buy information, you can, but how can it be as efficient as controlling the information yourself? This Xiao is different from Yingpu. This Xiao has no interest in managing the merchant union, but this Xiao has the means to expand the merchant union. When the two are combined, it's a win-win situation. At this moment, the yin-yang bracelet in the hands of the clan leader of the demon clan had already been passed to 2 elders. The 2 elders were also extremely surprised, but fortunately, they didn't cry out in alarm. Seeing this, Yingpa was also somewhat surprised. His gaze fell on the yin-yang bracelet, and he seemed to be lost in thought. "Yingpa, take a look at this." As he spoke, Xiaohua took out another yin-yang bracelet and passed it to Yingpa. Yingpa took it and scanned it with his origin force. He couldn't help but cry out again. "What?" Then, Yingpa realized that he had lost his composure. He looked at Xiaohua and passed the yin-yang bracelet to an elder beside him. "Yingpa, this Xiao has more than this." Xiaohua said with a smile, "Moreover, this Xiao will continuously provide these things to the merchant union. Do you think this Xiao has the capital to cooperate with the merchant union?" This. Yingpa was somewhat hesitant. Xiaohua struck while the iron was hot. He took out a jade bottle and passed it to Yingpa. take a look at this. What is this? Ingpu took the jade bottle and looked at it. He was somewhat puzzled and asked curiously, this bitter, what is this? Medicine. Xiao Hua pointed with his hand and said, this is the medicine of the Water Clan controlled by the Apricot Forest Medicine Store. This Xiao already had the bevan from before. This Xiao refined some of it myself. The raw materials are all from the Thousand Demon Sacred Realm and the North Sea. -13. Chapter 39:49. Hearing this, Ingbo couldn't help but stand up. Previously, Xiaohua's Heaven and Earth bracelet only contained some magic tools and other things. Although Ingbo was surprised, it was not enough to shock him. However, the medicine that Xiaohua took out made Ingbo unable to sit still. He clearly knew the status of the Apricot Forest Medicine Shop in the Yuling Bay. Since Xiaohua could take out this kind of medicine, he could naturally take out other things. Don't worry, don't worry. Xiaohua decided to say something shocking. He raised his hand and took out another Heaven and Earth bracelet and handed it to Ingbo. He said, fellow immortal, take a look at this. What is this? Ingbo didn't wait for the Heaven and Earth bracelet to fly over. He walked over and took the Heaven and Earth bracelet from the air. He checked it with his primordial thought and said in surprise, This is just a grain for the human race? What's the use of it? Hee. Xiao Hua said with a smile, perhaps you demons don't need this grain, but what about the hidden immortal continent and the pure land? If the Merchant Union wants to gain a foothold in these two places, which Confucian cultivator or Buddhist disciple would dare to go against the Merchant Union when you take out these things that are related to the people's livelihood? Ingbo and other demons naturally don't need this grain. They couldn't figure out the importance of it. However, after hearing Xiao Hua's words, they immediately understood. Ingbo even said with a smile, not just the two continents of the human race, even in my thousand demons sacred realm, there are still many demons who need this grain. But the problem is, Ingbo was a little hesitant, fellow immortal. You can only take out these, a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. Hee. Xiao Hua laughed. Don't forget about the disciples of my Black Wind Mountain. Where did they go? Ingbo patted his forehead and said with a smile, Taoist Xiao is really far-sighted. I seem to understand a little. Now, I'm afraid the number of disciples of my Black Wind Mountain is more than 10 times what you saw that day. Xiao Hua said with a smile, besides, with my reputation now, recruiting some Taoist cultivators is not a difficult thing. These spiritual herbs, magic tools, and grain can be endlessly given to me. Actually, my Taoist cultivators in the hidden immortal continent ostracized us. Otherwise, why would I cooperate with the Merchant Union? Sigh, not bad. Ingpa finally understood Xiao Hua's thoughts. He raised his head and looked at the elders who had already seen the universe bracelets. Then, he passed the medicine to them. This medicine, Xiao Hua chuckled. To tell you the truth, if the continuous Merchant Union can find more demon herbs, demon fruits, and other things, I can still let the disciples of the Black Wind Ridge refine even more. There's no need to talk about the seeds, but the medicine should be enough to make the name of the trade union known throughout the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm. Immortal's condition, Ingpa said with a bitter smile. I really can't refuse. The 9 elders looked through the items in the universal bracelet, and their eyes revealed a rare look of greed. Unfortunately, they couldn't see through Xiao Hua's strength. Moreover, they knew that Xiao Hua had defeated perfected Lord Qing'e. Who would dare to have any evil thoughts? Elders, what do you think? Ingpa asked. The group of elders looked at the universal bracelet in Ingpo's hands. They looked at each other for a moment and said, Immortal Xiao is an old friend of the clan leader. This matter, let the clan leader decide for himself. Immortal friends, Xiao Hua hurriedly said. When I talked to Ingpa earlier, I didn't plan to take out so many things. Therefore, I only plan to cooperate with the continuous Merchant Union to obtain information. Now that I've made it clear, I'm sure all the elders can see that the things I took out, not to mention the Prophet Merchant Union, even Star Picking Tower, is willing to cooperate with me. Therefore, my cooperation with the continuous Merchant Union may have to deepen a bit. Immortal Xiao, Do you mean that the Black Wind Ridge will cooperate with the continuous merchant union? Ingpu understood something and asked. Xiaohua nodded. Yes, you're right. My Black Wind Ridge provides the continuous merchant union with an endless supply of things. Naturally, my Black Wind Ridge will get something in return. This is different from the cooperation between me and the Luoyi Business Alliance. Ingpi thought for a moment and said, it's possible to cooperate with the Dao sect. However, this matter is of great importance. I can't decide on my own. I need to discuss it with the elders. Immortal Xiao, please wait a moment. Well said. Xiaohua sat down and said, you wait for the discussion. Bring me some demon herbs and demon fruits. Hee, no problem. Seeing Xiaohua's current appearance, Ingpa knew that he was very confident in this cooperation. He answered and called the demon race on guard outside. He then left with the group of elders. Xiaohua asked the demon race on guard for some demon fruits and some special aquatic plants in the North Sea. Then, he waved his hands and created waves of water. The water melted the aquatic plants and demon fruits one by one like flames. Then, Xiaohua used the water dissolution technique to start refining medicine in the hall. Seeing Xiaohua's miraculous skills, the demon race on guard was dumbstruck. Xiaohua's Qi Huang technique had long been perfected to the point of perfection. Refining a simple medicine was a piece of cake for him. In just a short moment, Xiaohua had finished refining the medicine. Seeing that Ingbo and the other members of the demon clan had yet to return, he simply continued to refine. Only after he had refined more than 10 medicines did Ingbo return to the hall. However, the 9 elders did not follow him, and the universe bangles were no longer in Ingbo's hands. Hee. Xiaohua naturally understood. He waved his hand and the water disappeared. He asked, fellow immortal, have you made a decision? Alas, immortal Xiaohua's things are really good. The conditions are also very generous. My inferior clansmen have no choice but to agree. Ingpa smiled bitterly and said, however, the elders also made it clear that this continuous merchant union is the last hope of my clan. They don't want immortal Xiaohua to control it. Alas, what kind of worry is this? Xiaohua waved his hand and said, this Xiao will definitely not. Moreover, this Xiao also guarantees that my Black Wind Ridge will not interfere in the development of the continuous merchant union. This Xiao and my Black Wind Ridge's development will only be in the cultivation of Taoism. If that's the case, this one agrees to cooperate with the Black Wind Ridge on behalf of my clansmen. Ingpa raised his claws and said solemnly, the continuous merchant union can give Black Wind Ridge 70% of the profits from the items of the Black Wind Ridge. As for the information that Black Wind Ridge needs, our continuous merchant union will unconditionally provide it. Immortal Xiao, as an ally of our continuous merchant union, not only will our continuous merchant union provide Immortal Xiao with the things that he needs first, our continuous merchant union can also give Immortal Xiao 10% of the profits every year. Of course, the condition is that whenever our continuous merchant union needs Immortal Xiaohua must act at any time. Oh, you still want this one to act? Xiaohua was somewhat surprised by the last condition. Ingpa smiled bitterly and said, the continuous merchant union is the hope of my clan. However, my clan no longer has a place in the Thousand Demons sacred realm. Therefore, this one has been thinking about finding a backer. Previously, this one did not feel that Immortal Xiaohua was very powerful. However, since Immortal Xiaohua was able to defeat Immortal Qing Yuan, your future prospects are limitless. If this one does not establish a good relationship with Immortal Xiaohua, when should I wait? Of course, if Immortal Xiao feels that 10% is not much, this one can give Immortal Xiao 5% of my profits. That's not necessary. This one just feels that as a Taoist cultivator, I will inevitably have some conflicts with Confucian cultivators in the future. I'm afraid that I will implicate the continuous merchant union in the future. Immortal Xiao doesn't need to worry about this. The demon clan's business in the hidden immortal continent and western land of ultimate bliss is already filled with difficulties. Immortal Xiao doesn't matter if you are a Taoist cultivator or a Confucian cultivator, as long as your strength is outstanding. Xiaohua was overjoyed and was about to agree. However, his heart moved and he said, also, the food seeds, medicine, and other things, you need to say that they are provided by Immortal Xiao. If possible, There is no need for any sea crystals or primeval stones. This is naturally possible. Ingpa nodded. There are also many poor demon clans in the Thousand Demons sacred realm. They may not have any primeval stones to give to immortal Xiao. Good. Xiao Hua raised his hand and patted Ingpo's claws. This is considered a formal alliance. Many thanks to immortal Xiao for giving my continuous merchant union another chance. Ingpa knew that Xiao Hua was a man of his words, and his heart was set. He smiled and took out a flat bone piece from his bosom and handed it to Xiao Hua. This is immortal Xiao's keepsake. With this keepsake, immortal Xiao can exercise authority in the continuous merchant union that is second only to me and the 9 elders. Haha, good. Xiao Hua took the bone piece and looked at it. There was a strange demon beast engraved on it. It was actually similar to a low-level demon beast in the legacy world. Xiao Hua took the bone piece and said, "Since this one is an ally of the continuous merchant union, you should bring some more universe bracelets over." This time, this one came out with something. If it wasn't for meeting fellow immortal, perhaps the Linlai Trading Company would have benefited. Good. Ingpa hurriedly ordered the demon clan guarding outside to take the universe bracelets. However, he said in a low voice, "Immortal Xiao." When this one came in, Immortal Xiao was refining medicine? Yes. Xiao Hua nodded. That's what this one promised Lu Hedi. Actually, there are many old Sea Clan members in this Yuling Bay. You should bring enough demon fruits and seaweed. This one will refine a batch for you first. This is naturally possible, Ingpa said somewhat embarrassedly, but what this one means is this refining technique. Can immortal Xiao Hua teach this one's clansmen? Hearing this, Xiao Hua immediately came to a realization. He nodded and said, "Of course. You and I are now in a cooperative relationship. This one naturally can teach your clansmen what this one knows." Immortal Xiao Hua. Ingpa was almost about to cry. Just now, there was an elder who said that immortal Xiao Hua had bad intentions. This one, as the patriarch, rejected it. Now, it seems that elder was really measuring the heart of a gentleman with his own mean measure. My human clan has a saying, distance tests a horse's strength, and time reveals a person's heart. In the future, it will be fine after a long time. Xiao Hua said indifferently, "You should find a few, or call all the clansmen who have some experience in refining medicine. This one is now thinking of how to teach them the refining technique." Okay, this one will do it right away. Ingpa couldn't even close his mouth. He hurriedly ran out by himself. He didn't even call the demon clan member on duty. Xiao Hua sat back in his chair. In his mind, he was thinking of how to teach the demon clan how to refine medicine. -13. Chapter 3950. Not long after, Ingpa actually brought in 30 or so demons, and even an elder came along. "Greetings, Master Xiao." The 30 or so demons obviously received Ingpo's orders and saluted respectfully as soon as they came in. "Master Xiao?" Xiao Hua smiled and raised his hand. Get up, then this Xiao will be your master for once." "Thank you, Master Xiao." The demons happily stood up. Xiao Hua raised his hand, and a green light flashed in the entire hall, and 30 or so green crystal threads entered between the eyebrows of the demons. In just a few breaths, all of the demons had painful expressions on their faces. Xiao Hua withdrew his soul technique and said indifferently, "All of you carefully recall and comprehend. After an hour, you should be able to remember half of what the demons left behind." "Yes, this disciple understands." The 30 or so demons all answered, then closed their eyes and carefully memorized. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "Ingpa, come over here." "Yes, master." At this moment, Ingpa prostrated himself in admiration of Xiao Hua and hurriedly walked over. "Are the universe bangles ready?" "Here." Ingpu took out a dozen or so universe bangles. It's almost enough." Xiao Hua held a universe bag in his left hand and a universe bag in his right hand. In just a short moment, Ingpo's dozen or so universe bangles were all filled, and he said with a smile, "This is the first time my Black Wind Ridge cooperated with the Luo Merchant Union, and I'm quite sincere. In the future, I'm afraid we'll have a long relationship." Ingpu was so excited that his face turned pale. although there were many things, but it was enough to take his life. When he was bidding, he still had to consider the safety of the Luoyi Merchant Union, and it was really not easy. Ing Piao took out a universe bangle and handed it to the elder who followed him, and said in a low voice, "This universe bangle and the previous ones, you all discuss how to bid. Do not attract the attention of other experts. This old man knows." This elder could be considered to be completely at ease with Xiao Hua, and he cupped his hands towards Xiao Hua and Ing Pu, then hurriedly left. After the elder left, Xiao Hua asked again, "Ing Pu, what good things does the Luoyi Merchant Union have now?" "I'll let Master know." Ing Pu shook his head and said, "Previously, I had prepared some things for you. However, when I heard that the Black Wind Ridge was gone, I bid for those things. However, if Taoist Master needs anything, feel free to tell me and I'll have my clansmen search for it." "Some news," Xiao Hua said in a low voice. "News about metal and wood magnetism, metal and earth magnetism, wood and water magnetism. Also, where can I find the extreme magnetic ray?" Ingpa didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Taoist Master, these... I'm afraid that our clansmen won't be able to find them. I'll help you take a look elsewhere." "All right, thank you, fellow immortal." Xiao Hua understood the difficulty of this information and nodded. "As long as we can find it, the time doesn't matter. There's also a universe bracelet here." Ing Pu took out another one from his bosom and smiled. "I just took this from the storage area. It's filled with demon fruits, demon herbs, seaweed, sea wood, and other ordinary items of the 1,000 demon sacred realm. These should be able to be refined into medicine." "All right, this old man understands." Xiao Hua took the universe bracelet and said, "This old man will do his best to refine it." Throwing the universe bracelet to Green Robe, Xiao Hua asked with a smile, "Fellow immortal, what other good things do you have here?" Ing Piu shook his head and said, "The Luoyi Merchant Union just held an auction. There aren't many things left. I reckon that they won't be able to enter Taoist Master's eyes. If Taoist Master wants to find something, Zhai Xing Lu's auction is in 3 days. This one can accompany fellow immortal to take a look." "There's an auction?" Xiao Hua smiled and said, "The day before yesterday, it was Yazi Auction House. Now it's Luoyi Merchant Union. 3 days later, it's Zhai Xing Lu's. Then Lilai Trading Company will also have one in the near future, right?" "That's right." Ingpa nodded and said, "In Yuling Bay, only our 4 clans are qualified to hold auctions. We usually arrange our own auctions according to Yazi Auction House's auctions, most of which are held recently. Tomorrow should be Lilai Trading Companies, but Sea Soul Scholars' items are mostly from the human race, and most of them are from Confucian cultivators. This one also went to participate, and I reckon that it's somewhat different from fellow immortals' expectations. Therefore, this one suggests fellow immortal to participate in Zhai Xing Lu's auction 3 days later. Their items are not inferior to Yazi auction houses, and are usually placed at the end, which is the so-called finale of the human race." Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, "Since the Luo Chamber of Commerce has some relationship with the Lilai Trading Company, you might as well send one of your subordinates over to ask what the Lilai Trading Company has prepared for this auction. If this Xiao has any intentions, this Xiao can go over and take a look." "That's right." Ingpa nodded and said, "Taoist Master is right. In every auction, if there isn't a special reason, we will make the items to be auctioned public. This one will send my clansmen over to inquire." Not to mention that Ingpe sent his clansmen to Lilai Trading Company to inquire. Just these 30 or so clansmen of Ingpe slowly woke up after a full hour. Xiao Hua originally had some expectations, thinking that the longer they comprehended, the more they would be able to remember. However, after asking, he was very disappointed. Most of them had forgotten 80% of the simple water fusion technique, and only 4 clansmen of the demon race had remembered 30%. It seems that the inheritance of the demon race really emphasizes bloodline. Xiao Hua thought to himself, "It's completely different from my human race. This water fusion technique is not too complicated. As long as the cultivators of my human race put in the effort, even if they can't be outstanding, they can at least comprehend the majority of it by analogy." Waving his hand to let the 20 or so clansmen of the demon race leave, Xiao Hua said to Ingpa standing next to him, "Ingpa, it seems that only these 4 clansmen can try to refine the medicine." Not only was Ingpa not disappointed, but his eyes were also abnormally fanatical, and he couldn't suppress the joy in his mouth as he said, "Thank you, Taoist Master. If it weren't for Taoist Master's secret technique, how could my clansmen master the Taoist cultivation method? In the future, if my clan can prosper, I will have to thank Taoist Master Xiao." Oh, seeing this, Xiao Hua was enlightened again. He wasn't a demon, so his thoughts were different from the demon race. However, he forgot that as long as he taught these 4 clansmen of the water fusion technique, and these 4 clansmen of the demon race passed it on in the clan, perhaps in another 1,000 or 10,000 years, this water fusion technique would be integrated into the bloodline of Ingpo's clan. Ingpo and the other clansmen of the demon race in the future might be born with the water fusion technique. No wonder Ingpo shed tears of gratitude. Thinking of this, an inconceivable thought appeared in his mind. Damn it, this Xiao knows so many secret techniques of the demon race, and has obtained the bloodline of the absolute saint. Then, this Xiao's descendants, what kind of situation will they be? This thought naturally flashed through Xiao Hua's mind, but how could Xiao Hua know? The hand of karma in his space was gradually taking shape, so how could all these thoughts appear out of thin air? Many of them were related to the karma of the river of karma. What he occasionally thought of might just be a small wave in the river of karma. Afterwards, Xiao Hua asked the 4 clansmen of the demon race about their comprehension, and gave them detailed instructions on how to use their demon power to perform the water fusion technique. Furthermore, in front of these 4 clansmen of the demon race, he refined the medicine again and again. Unfortunately, although the 4 clansmen of the demon race already understood how to control their demon power, no matter what, they couldn't display their demon power properly. This made Xiao Hua very depressed. When did he have to be so patient when teaching his disciples? Fu Jiwen, Lu Yi, and the others, which one of them didn't immediately understand when he casually mentioned it? Even Black Bear, White Lion, and Golden Eagle only had a single soul technique to teach them the cultivation method. How could these 4 wooden clansmen of the demon race compare? However, it was good that Xiao Hua needed to refine medicine for Bromine and the other old members of the sea race, so he simply patiently refined it again and again. After 3 days, Xiao Hua gave the refined medicine to Ingpo, and had him find a clansman to give it to Lu. He then looked at the demon race who were still frantically practicing the water fusion technique and said, "This old man's teachings end here. As for how to practice in the future, it will be up to you. In the secret techniques this old man left you, there is also a method to use a pill furnace to refine medicine. When you find a pill furnace in the future, you can try it yourself. That way, it might be much easier than now. You don't have to be too radical now." Reverend, rest assured, this one has already sent clansmen to look for it. The human pill furnace may not be easy to use, but our demon race should have something similar. Ingpa smiled at the side and said, "Now, I will accompany Reverend to Zhai Xinglu. Many thanks, Master Xiao." The 4 clansmen bowed and thanked this unfathomable Master Xiao with heartfelt admiration. Xiao Hua waved his hand, indicating the 4 to continue practicing. He then followed Ingpi out of the Luo Yi Merchant Union. As soon as he went out, he saw a sea beast holding a conch-like carriage waiting there. Xiao Hua smiled. It's still better to have sea crystals. Previously, when I followed Lu and Di, I had to rely on myself to fly. In the middle of the journey, I was interrogated by the sea race of the Feather Spirit Palace. Now that we are riding a sea carriage, there shouldn't be so many trifles, right? Reverend, please. Ingper invited Xiao Hua onto the sea carriage and said with a smile, "Reverend, these few days in Yuling Bay are different from the past. The Feather Spirit Palace caused a mess in Yuling Bay because of the matter of the Yazi Arena. Normally, there are also many sea carriages. Even if you don't ride a sea carriage, you won't be interrogated." Xiao Hua's heart moved and he asked again, "This Xiao also knows about these matters, I just don't know. Has the North Sea Dragon Palace found the Confucian cultivator that caused trouble? Has the monster that escaped been caught?" According to reliable information, the North Sea Dragon Palace has already sent dragon generals more than 10,000 li deep into the hidden immortal continent, but they still haven't found any traces of the Confucian cultivator. Ingpa replied, "If the Confucian cultivator can't be found, then of course there's no news about the monster that escaped." "Oh," Xiao Hua casually responded, but his heart was slightly bewildered. "Damn it, Could it be that Jiang Shang was eaten by those leopards? But whether they were eaten or not, what does it have to do with this Xiao? After the time it took to eat a meal, the sound of wind gradually appeared outside the window. The sound of the wind was getting louder and louder. Not only was there a mournful sound, even the sea carriage was slightly shaking. Ingpo looked at the gloomy sky outside the window and said with a smile, "It's rare that there's no tsunami wind these few days. Today, it's starting to blow again. This time, it will blow for several days." -13. Chapter 39:51. Xiao Hua nodded when he saw how powerful the sea breeze was. The winds and clouds above the North Sea are unpredictable. No one knows when a tsunami will appear. Yuling Bay is right by the sea. Naturally, it will be the first to be affected. As he spoke, Xiao Hua looked outside. Whether it was the Yi residence or the Yi shop, they were all glowing. It was obvious that the demon array of Yuling Bay was slowly activating to resist the strong sea breeze. As Xiao Hua and Ingpo were talking, the sea carriage actually flew up again towards the foot of the mountain. Io. Xiao Hua looked up and saw a few majestic palaces standing at the foot of the mountain. Amidst the raging sea breeze, wisps of light appeared around the palaces. Xiao Hua couldn't help but ask in astonishment, could Zhai Xinglu be in one of these palaces? Damn it, I always thought that this was Yuling Palace's place. Yuling Palace is filled with the water clan of the North Sea Dragon Palace. Although they can leave the water, they still like to stay in the water. Yuling Palace is built underground in the mountain and is connected to the North Sea. They will not build their palaces on the mountain. Ingpa smiled. Only Zhai Xinglu is wealthy enough to challenge the North Sea Dragon Palace and build palaces on the foot of the mountain. Xiao Hua frowned and narrowed his eyes. He looked at the approaching palaces and asked curiously, is Zhai Xinglu so powerful? They can actually challenge the North Sea Dragon Palace? How powerful is Zhai Xinglu? This is a question that I considered when I first formed the Continuous Merchant Alliance. Then, I started to gather information to find the answer. But even now, I do not know the answer to this question. Actually, there is no need to think too much. Look at Yuling Bay. All the powers rely on the North Sea Dragon Palace. Only Zhai Xinglu has built palaces on the mountain. This is enough to show how powerful Zhai Xinglu is. Ingpa said with some fascination. Xiao Hua smiled. He had not expected that Zhai Xinglu, whom he had met in the Bronze Pillar country, would actually be so powerful. It looked like he would have to re-evaluate the words of Zhu Qing. However, thinking about it from another perspective, Duanmu Qing and Morong Tsongyun, who were both secondary first-rank aristocratic families, were well-behaved in Zhai Xinglu. Even the East Sea Dragon Palace's patrol envoy was well-behaved. Presumably, Zhai Xinglu would not be as unbearable as Xiao Hua had previously thought, right? Woo! A huge gust of sea wind swept over, and the entire carriage finally couldn't withstand it. It spun in the air and crashed towards the mountain peak. Xiao Hua's figure flashed and appeared in midair. With a shake of his big sleeves, he covered the sea chariot. After that, Xiao Hua transformed into a rainbow and landed on the ground. Looking at Ingpo, who was unable to fly out of the sea chariot in time, he said with a smile, "The sea breeze is so strong. You don't need to accompany this Xiao to the auction. You can go back first." Ingpo pondered for a moment and nodded. The sea breeze is indeed too strong. There won't be too many monsters participating in the auction. My strength is too weak, and I might delay the auction. It's better for me to turn back. Then, Ingpo reminded him again. The token of the Continuous Merchant Union in Zhai Xinglu's hands should be useful in Zhai Xinglu. Don't forget to take it out when you enter. Hee, this old man knows. You can go back now. Xiao Hua smiled and transformed into a rainbow again. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived near the palace. Seeing Xiao Hua's figure disappear, Ingpo took a deep breath and muttered, "Zhai Xinglu, I hope you won't disappoint this one." In order to pull Zhai Xinglu into the Merchant Union, this one had a falling out with the 9 elders. The affairs of the world were very strange. Many accidental factors were often more decisive than certain factors. If the Continuous Merchant Union had developed normally, with the efforts of Ingpo and the elders of the clan, it might have been able to develop. However, this development was filled with hardships. Every day, countless merchant unions and trading companies appeared in the three continents. Every day, countless merchant unions and trading companies closed down. Perhaps, this kind of continuous merchant union would disappear one day. However, they had met Xiaohua. Who had come to Yulingbei to look for Ao Zhantian. This mere chance encounter had completely changed the fate of the continuous merchant union. Perhaps many years later, when Ingpu and the 9 elders thought about this seemingly hasty decision, they would be very glad that they had seized this one and only opportunity. Xiaohua didn't think as much as Ingpu. His figure was flying in the air, and he had already seen clearly that in front of the palace, there was a pavilion that was dozens of feet tall. On the pavilion, there was a signboard that was about 10 feet tall, with the words Zhaixing Lu written on it. These 3 words looked exactly the same as the ones Xiaohua had seen in the Bronze Pillar Nation. They were written by the same person. However, Xiaohua didn't dare to underestimate them now. And when Xiaohua withdrew his contempt, those 3 big words looked extremely wonderful again. It was far from having the aura of the secular world that it had in the past. Damn it! Xiaohua looked at it for a moment, then withdrew his gaze and smiled bitterly. Are the words good? Or is this Zhao's heart dirty? Along with Xiaohua's figure appearing in front of the pavilion, a respectful voice sounded out from within. Greetings, senior. Then, a light pillar that was like a ladder stretched out from the pavilion, and a young man in plain clothes walked out from within. He respectfully saluted and said, Senior, have you come to participate in the auction? Yes. Xiaohua stood in the air. Although there was no light around him, the sea breeze didn't even lift a corner of Xiaohua's Taoist robe. Senior, please. The young man took a few steps forward, and the light pillar also extended and covered Xiaohua. Xiaohua didn't need to use his magic power, and the light pillar brought Xiaohua into the pavilion. The interior of the pavilion was similar to the Zhaixing Lu in the Bronze Pillar Nation. It was a huge open space, and the ground looked like a huge glass. Xiaohua could clearly see the low vegetation on the mountain peak swaying helplessly in the sea breeze. On both sides of the open space, there were already some dragon horse carriages. There were also some sea beasts lying obediently on the ground. Several tall sea race people were holding strange weapons in their hands, guarding these carriages. After the open space, there was a huge palace. Behind this palace, there were also many interconnected palaces. It was much larger than the Zhaixing Lu in the Bronze Pillar Nation. At this moment, the palace's doors were wide open, and more than 10 men in plain clothes stood there in an orderly manner. They all had smiles on their faces. Senior, this way please. The young man was well trained. He waited for Xiaohua to pause for a moment and clearly see the situation around him. Then he raised his hand and said respectfully, In. Xiaohua nodded and followed the young man to the front of the palace. The 10 men respectfully bowed at the same time and said in unison, Greetings, senior. Rise. Xiaohua nodded and walked closer to the Zhaixing Lu. After entering the Zhaixing Lu twice, Xiaohua was no longer the unknown Taoist cultivator of the past. Sure enough, as Xiaohua had expected, the moment he entered Zhaixing Lu, he was faced with the same screen. Xiaohua had originally wanted to pass by it, but after taking 2 steps, he stopped and turned to the man behind him. What's your number? The man was stunned. Then he smiled and said, Senior, I'm here to welcome guests. I don't have a number. Oh. Xiaohua nodded and said with a smile, In that case, you don't know anything about this screen? Screen? The man was stunned. Then his expression immediately changed to one of respect. He said, Senior, since you know about the screen of my Zhaixing Lu, you are naturally my Zhaixing Lu's distinguished guest. Senior, please wait a moment. I'll ask the chief steward to come over. Okay. Xiaohua thought for a moment and simply stood there without moving. The man didn't dare to leave. He took out a jade slip and flicked it. The jade slip flew out soundlessly. He then said to Xiaohua, Senior, please wait a moment. My chief steward will come over immediately. In just a few breaths, a beautiful cloud appeared not far away. Then, a woman even prettier than the clouds walked out. When the woman saw Xiaohua, a strange expression appeared on her face. She didn't even walk close to him and immediately said respectfully, So it's Taoist Xiao. Junior Zhong Chao greet Senior. Seeing that Zhong Qiao recognized him at a glance and flew over, Xiao Hua was no longer surprised. Some people in this world were born to be chief stewards. Xiao Hua's strength was outstanding, and he believed he had a photographic memory for cultivation techniques and other aspects. However, he never dared to place high hopes on himself when it came to judging people's faces. Oh? Xiao Hua raised an eyebrow and raised a hand to lift Zhong Qiao up. He smiled and said, I thought the chief steward was a man. I didn't expect you to be an outstanding woman. People often say that women are not inferior to men. Indeed, it's true. Zhong Qiao stood up and said with a smile, Senior, you flatter me. I'm just an ordinary person. I do what I should do and get what I should get. Well said. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said, the matters of the world are so simple. However, many people don't understand. Zhong Qiao smiled and asked, Senior, may I know why you've come to my Zhai Xinglu? Xiao Hua was about to answer, but his heart skipped a beat and he asked again. I occasionally passed by Yuling Bay and heard that there was a Zhai Xinglu here. I wanted to see if Zhu Qing was here. Haha, I'm here. Of course, Zhu Qing isn't here. Zhong Qiao said with a smile. As for where Zhu Qing is, I don't know either. In that case, I can only ask Miss about the matters of the Xingyue Palace? Xiao Hua asked again. Senior, you're indeed here for the matters of the Xingyue Palace. Zhong Qiao said with a smile. It looks like the Xingyue Palace is fated to be with you. Oh. Xiao Hua's eyes lit up and he asked curiously, could it be that there's news about the Xingyue Palace? This is not the place to talk. Senior, please come with me. Zhong Qiao looked around. Although it was the same as before and there were no other cultivators or members of the sea race nearby, Zhong Qiao still felt worried and said, Xiao Hua nodded. Zhong Qiao raised a hand and pointed, and a spiral staircase appeared beneath their feet. Under Zhong Qiao's lead, Xiao Hua came to a loft. Xiao Hua looked at the loft that was similar to the auction house in the past and said with a smile, this is the high platform of the auction house, right? -13. Chapter 3952. Senior, you're right. Zhong Qiao smiled. Since you're here, let's bid again. It's still early now, so I'll tell you about Xingyue Palace. All right. Xiao Hua nodded. I remember Zhu Qing said that if I hear news about Xingyue Palace, I can find any Zhai Xinglu Xingyue can send me to Xingyue Palace. It's exactly as you said. Zhong Qiao smiled. Senior's name and image have been left in Xingyue. As long as you appear in Zhai Xinglu, we will definitely tell you about Xingyue Palace. Moreover, you defeated perfected Lord Qingyuan of the Immortal Palace and sowed seeds for justice, benefiting all living beings in the world. Now that your reputation is growing, as long as you appear in Zhai Xinglu, we will give you news about Xingyue Palace without any name or image. Haha, I'm ashamed. Xiao Hua smiled. It's just an act of fishing for fame, but you all know about it. Hee. Zhong Qiao covered her mouth, her beautiful eyes rippling with an indescribable expression. If you're fishing for fame, there won't be any good deeds in the world. Zhai Xinglu also wants to do such a good deed, but with Zhai Xinglu's strength, we can't do it. This shows the importance of Senior's good deed. Moreover, when I saw Senior's good deed just now, I thought it was Senior's simple benevolence, but thinking carefully, there are too many things to ponder about. Seeing that Zhong Qiao did not talk about Xingyue Palace and instead changed the topic, Xiao Hua asked, why can't Zhai Xinglu do it? What did you see? If it's immortal herbs or demon fruits, Zhai Xinglu may be able to find them. But if it's so many seeds, where will Zhai Xinglu get them? There are many disasters in the hidden immortal mainland now, and only Su Province and Yu Province are safe. How can the people of these two provinces have extra food? Although there is food in the Western Paradise, the war between immortals and Buddhas is imminent. No one dares to take this risk. Moreover, how many primordial stones can this risk be worth? Zhong Qiao explained with a smile. After all, Xingyue isn't a piece of white paper. Xiao Hua sighed. Once stained with the stench of money, even the white jade will be covered in dust. Zhong Qiao ignored Xiao Hua's sigh and continued. Moreover, Senior has just defended the Immortal Palace. Now, taking advantage of the grain seed matter, You are wantonly gathering the people's support. If the Immortal Palace wants to suppress you again, I'm afraid they will be extremely scrupulous. Now that I think about it, I really admire your calculation. You can actually think of getting rid of the control of the Immortal Palace from the hearts of the people. This is something that I have never dreamed of. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. When he took out the grain seed, he never thought about it. If it had such an effect, it could only be an unintentional result. Also, Zhong Qiao continued, if Senior had been the only one spreading the news, the Confucian cultivators would have killed it long ago, and no one would have known. However, the Confucian cultivators led by the four great clans were not convinced by the Immortal Palace, so they used Senior's matter to humiliate the Immortal Palace. As a result, Senior's matter spread like wildfire, and more cultivators knew about it. There were even many clans that sent Senior's grain seeds to various places in 9 regions. Taoist Xiao has become the savior of many people in the hidden immortal continent. As long as time passes, Taoist Xiao's name will certainly be known by all the people in the hidden immortal continent. Also, Senior Xiao, if this junior's prediction is correct, it won't be long before Senior will be pardoned by the Immortal Palace, and even be rewarded by the Immortal Palace. Xiaohua was somewhat stunned. He didn't expect that his seed planting in the God and Devil blood pool would be known by the world so quickly. Even more, he didn't expect that the speed of the Confucian cultivator clans was far beyond his imagination. How long had it been? They had already spread their grain seeds throughout 9 regions. In particular, he really envied Zhai Xinglu's source of information. This small chief manager of Zhai Xinglu actually knew so much. However, when he heard Zhong Qiao's words, he was somewhat puzzled and asked curiously, how is that possible? This old man is already surprised that the Immortal Palace didn't arrest me. How can there be a reward? Presumably Taoist Xiao knows that your Tao school has an old senior called the Grand Mist Ancestor, right? Of course I know. Xiaohua somewhat understood. Since that old senior doesn't listen to the Immortal Palace and wants to go against the Immortal Palace, then the Immortal Palace naturally has to find someone who can go against that old senior. Zhong Qiao explained, and isn't Senior Xiao just the right person? Xiaohua's mouth was bitter, but he still shook his head. Unfortunately, this old man's strength is too far from the Grand Mist Ancestors. It doesn't matter if your cultivation is lacking. The Immortal Palace has countless methods. Raising Senior's cultivation is just a matter of lifting a finger. Zhong Qiao smiled and said, but if you want to find someone with such a good reputation like Taoist Xiao, you won't be able to find one even in 100,000 years. This is the Immortal Palace's plan to sow discord. Presumably, the Grand Mist Ancestor can see through it with a glance, otherwise, this old man will be in danger. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, Taoist Xiao. Zhong Qiao smiled and said, if it's that simple, then it's good. In fact, Junior sometimes thinks about Senior's actions, although it's calculated very well, if there's no time, or if Senior's luck is bad, even if you pile up grain seeds all over the hidden immortal continent, the Immortal Palace may not give face to the Confucian aristocratic families. Don't talk about rewards. Perhaps they might even kill the chicken to scare the monkeys and warn the 4 aristocratic families. Senior, don't forget what you said in the Copper Pillar State. If the Immortal Palace wants to kill Senior, the 4 aristocratic families definitely won't dare to brazenly stop it. Oh, where is this old man's luck good? Xiaohua was somewhat at a loss as he was in the middle of the situation. Naturally, it's the war between immortals and Buddhas, Zhong Qiao replied. Xiaohua scratched his head. Since it's a war between immortals and Buddhas, what does it have to do with this old man, a Taoist cultivator? The war between immortals and Buddhas naturally has nothing to do with Senior, but Senior has won the hearts of the people. Zhong Qiao's words hit Xiaohua like a thunderbolt. Xiaohua instantly understood. The Buddhist sects obtained believers in the hidden immortal continent, and their power infiltrated the lower levels of the Confucian cultivators' rule through the common people. This was precisely what the Confucian cultivators feared, and at the same time, it was also their shortcoming. The war between immortals and Buddhas was also based on this fundamental reason. And the appearance of Xiaohua broke the situation where the Buddhist sects were the dominant power among the common people. Xiao Hua's good deeds were exactly similar to the Buddhist sects, and even more direct. Although the common people who knew or respected Taoist Master Xiao couldn't be compared to the common people who worshipped Mahavairakana, but in the future, under the intentional push of the Immortal Palace, a Taoist master who fought against the faith of the Buddhist sects would definitely be formed. This kind of faith was a powerful aid for the Confucian cultivators in the war between immortals and Buddhas. As for the threat that Taoist Master Xiao posed to the Immortal Palace simply didn't put it in their eyes. The Immortal Palace was afraid of the Buddhist sects, but they were simply not afraid of the weak Taoist Master Xiao. Ha ha ha. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua laughed. Zhong Qiao also covered her mouth and said, Taoist Master really understands. It seems that Junior doesn't need to say it clearly. That's right. You don't need to say it clearly. Xiao Hua nodded. No matter how clearly this matter was explained, it was likely that no one would know the peculiarity within. No one would know that the Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva, revered by the Buddhist sect, and the Taoist Tao sect's Taoist Xiao, were the same person. Since ancient times, there had been many cases where the fishermen benefited from the fight between the snipe and the clam, but there had never been such a big fisherman like Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua actually wanted to know what kind of reward this snipe of the Immortal Palace would give him. Moreover, Xiao Hua also clearly knew that the Immortal Palace would definitely give him a reward, not only because of the support of the four great families, but also because of his merit and virtue, allowing him to confront the faith of the Buddhist sections. If that's the case. Xiao Hua thought again. Previously, this Xiao vaguely felt that there would be a disaster, but now it seems that this disaster has nothing to do with the Immortal Palace. Senior. Zhong Qiao of course didn't know what Xiao Hua was planning in his heart, and said, these are all Junior's guesses. It's because Junior read the Book of Heroes and really admired the ingenuity of Senior's chess set, which is far more useful than the Demon God chess set. That's why Junior couldn't help but speak in front of Senior. If there's any disrespect, I hope Senior can forgive me. It's fine, it's fine. Xiao Hua said with a smile. This Xiao likes straightforward people the most. Since that's the case, Junior will tell Senior about the Star Moon Palace. Zhong Qiao paused and said, actually, there's no clear news about the Star Moon Palace for the time being, but there are some strange phenomena. Judging from previous experience, I'm afraid that it will take at least 200 years for the outline to appear, so Junior can't tell Senior where the Star Moon Palace is, nor can I tell Senior the specific time. 200 years. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, that's not particularly long. The Star Moon Order says at least 200 years. There's no guarantee if it's more than that, maybe 2,000 years. Zhong Qiao said with a smile. Hearing this, Xiao Hua suddenly raised his head, stared at Zhong Qiao, and asked word by word, what you said earlier. I'm afraid it's not your own thoughts, right? Zhong Qiao's face changed, and she hurriedly got up, bowed and said, Senior, please forgive me. Some of it is Junior's thoughts, and some of it is from the Star Moon Order passed down from Xingyun. It should be from all the managers of the star-picking towers. Senior, you don't have to worry. Other than these matters, there are also some related to the Confucian cultivators recorded in the Book of Heroes. For these human elites, Xingyun holds the greatest goodwill and cooperation, and can even provide some help. Xiao Hua's expression was a little cold, and he took out a jade eye and handed it to Zhong Qiao, saying, this is something I need. Take a look. Does Star Moon have it? Yes, Senior. Zhong Qiao did not dare to be negligent. She took the jade eye and looked at it, then said with a bitter smile, Senior, you're making things difficult for me. Wood and water elemental magnetism, water and fire elemental magnetism, fire and earth elemental magnetism, and metal elemental magnetism are all things of legend. Where can I find them? Not to mention Khanate Wood Mother and Khanate Earth Mother. I'm not asking you to find them. Xiao Hua replied indifferently, don't you have Star Moon behind you? Isn't Star Moon willing to help? Zhong Qiao did not know whether to laugh or cry, and said in a low voice, the things you want are too rare in this world, even for Star Moon. -13. Chapter 39:53. Forget it. Xiao Hua waved his hand with a smile. You don't have to find it. Just give me the news. Yes, I will report this to Xing Yue in a moment. Senior can inquire about it at any Zhai Xinglu in the future. Zhong Qiao felt that she had outsmarted herself. That's more like it. Xiao Hua said as he reached out and took out a jade eye. What about the materials inside? So much? Zhong Qiao was dumbfounded when she saw the materials used to build the teleportation array and the thunderbolt in Xiao Hua's jade eye. After a moment of surprise, she said with a smile, "We do have these materials, and many of them are being auctioned at today's auction. Senior wants so many materials, I dare not make the decision. If possible, Senior only needs to bid." Humph, isn't that the same as not saying anything? Xiao Hua snorted coldly, scaring Zhong Qiao into cold sweat. Seeing Zhong Qiao's expression change, Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "Forget it, I will bid later." "Yes, thank you, Senior. Senior is an honored guest of Zhai Xinglu. Everything will be discounted," Zhong Qiao hurriedly said obediently. "Oh, that's right. Besides me, are there any recent deeds of those Confucian cultivators in the Book of Heroes?" Xiao Hua asked. When Zhong Qiao heard this, her expression changed again. She hurriedly said, "Senior, please forgive me. I cannot speak of those things casually. After all, each person's secrets are hidden within." "Can you at least tell me the names of those Confucian cultivators?" Xiao Hua asked with a smile. But in Zhong Qiao's eyes, his smile was full of conspiracy. Zhong Qiao thought for a moment and said with a bitter smile, "Senior, did you come to Zhai Xinglu because you obtained some information?" Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. He stopped smiling and looked out the window. "What do you think? Alas, since Senior wants to find trouble with that person, actually, you can wait until that person leaves Zhai Xinglu. After all, whether it's Senior or that person, they are both honored guests of Zhai Xinglu and are protected by Zhai Xinglu." Zhong Qiao sighed. A few days ago, Long Jiang from Feather Spirit Palace forced his way to Zhai Xinglu, but I did not reveal that person's whereabouts. If that person was Senior, I would still do the same. Therefore, I hope that Senior won't force me. Zhong Qiao's words made Xiao Hua even more curious. There were quite a few Confucian cultivators who had enmity with him, but most of them were secrets. However, Xiao Hua already knew how powerful Xingyu was. Perhaps they knew some secrets. Who was this person who deserved his bad luck? Duanmu Qing. That's not right. With Duanmu Qing's current cultivation, how could she be worthy of this old man's bad luck? It's Duanmu Liangsheng. The first thing Xiao Hua thought of was the Duanmu family and Duanmu Liangsheng. Xiao Hua even felt a little guilty, but he immediately shook his head. That's not right. This old man's grudge with Duanmu Liangsheng is too secretive. Xingyue couldn't possibly know. Then, who is it? Suddenly, Xiao Hua was startled. He seemed to have thought of something and almost jumped out of his chair. Since it was Star Picking Tower, then he should have thought of Bronze Pillar State. Since there was Bronze Pillar State, then he should have thought of Bronze Pillar Academy. Thinking of Bronze Pillar Academy, Xiao Hua couldn't help but think of its dean and deputy. And since he thought of these two people, Xiao Hua can already determine who the person who is worthy of his bad luck is. Other than Do Shanjun, who had fought with him in front of Bronze Pillar Academy, and Do Shanjun, who had revealed his extraordinary cultivation in the Black Wind Ridge Cave abode, who else was worthy of Xiao Hua's bad luck? Who else could see Xingyu and the big hand behind the screen like Xiao Hua? Xiao Hua forcefully suppressed his surprise. He really didn't know what he was feeling now. Did he want to see Do Shanjun, or did he want to quickly escape from this place? Facing Do Shanjun, Xiao Hua felt that he was a child without any strength to fight back. He really didn't like this feeling. Hee, this old man hasn't seen Professor Do for many years and wanted to see if he was still as elegant as before. You don't have to be afraid. Since you don't want to say, this old man won't force you. Xiao Hua said with a smile while stealing glances at Zhong Qiao's expression. Sure enough, Zhong Qiao's face was obviously relaxed. She said with a smile, "Thank you, Senior, for your tolerance." However, before Zhong Qiao's voice fell, a very strange divine sense swept in from outside. The restriction inside the pavilion was completely invisible to this divine sense. When this divine sense swept over Xiao Hua, it immediately caused a very slight tremble in the bottom of Xiao Hua's heart. Damn it! Xiao Hua immediately became alert. He was greatly alarmed. He didn't need to think at all. His first thought was, this Do Shanjun. What cultivation level is he at? This Xiao had only just mentioned him, and he immediately sensed it. Since he knew that Do Shanjun was in Zhaixing Lu, Xiaohua's tone pretended to be respectful. He waved his hand and said, we didn't get to know each other until we fought. Although he's a Confucian cultivator and I'm a Taoist, I've also practiced Confucian swordsmanship and have a certain relationship with Confucian cultivators. How can I find trouble with him as you think? Hee. This is probably what a hero cherishes another hero. Zhong Qiao covered her mouth and laughed again. She looked very indescribably beautiful. Although Do Shanjun's cultivation level can't compare to Taoist Zhao's, he can also see the secret of the screen. In the future, if the two seniors enter Xingyue Palace hand in hand, it may be another beautiful story in the future. Xiaohua was a little tongue-tied. Zhong Qiao's words were awkward no matter how he heard them, but he couldn't refute anything. Zhong Qiao had probably said everything she needed to say. She stood up and said, the auction will begin in half an incense stick's worth of time. Junior won't nag Senior anymore. Junior wishes Senior a fruitful return today. Hee. I'll take advantage of your auspicious words. Xiaohua nodded, not standing up. Zhong Qiao took her leave. Not long after, a beautiful woman came to deliver spirit fruits and other things. Xiaohua asked, and this woman was indeed called Xiao Yi. Xiao Yi had just left with the spirit fruits and returned in a moment, holding a visiting card in her hand. She said with a nervous expression, Senior, Do Shanjun of Bronze Pillar Academy wants to visit. Oh, is that so? Why aren't you inviting him in? Xiaohua was well aware, but he pretended to be surprised and stood up. Xiao Yi's expression relaxed, and she said with a smile, Senior, please sit down. Do Shanjun is here to visit. You're a senior, so there's no need to be so courteous. Hee. This old man and Do Shanjun are old acquaintances. It's nothing to welcome him. Senior is really amiable and approachable, Xiao Yi said and left the pavilion. A moment later, Do Shanjun walked in. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly went up to greet and was about to salute. Do Shanjun waved his hand and waved his big sleeve. A cloud of rosy clouds came out from his sleeve and blended into the pavilion's surroundings in a moment. A layer of warm, jade-like luster emerged from the four walls. Xiaohua knew that Do Shanjun had set up a restriction to prevent others from spying on the scenery here. He bowed and said, Junior Xiaohua greets Senior. However, just as he bowed and his gaze fell to the ground, he was suddenly shocked. He secretly frowned and said, even with Do Shanjun's cultivation, he has to be so careful in Zhaixing Lu. Then, who was he guarding against? Get up. Do Shanjun raised his hand to help Xiaohua up and sat at the place where Xiaohua was sitting before. He raised his head to look at Xiaohua, who was standing respectfully in front of him, and said with a smile, It's only been a few decades since we last met, but your name is actually so resounding that it far surpasses this old man's. Wherever you go, this old man still has to retreat 3 steps. Xiaohua said in panic, Senior is thinking too much. It's all because Senior is keeping a low profile and doesn't want others to know. Compared to Senior, this Junior is only the light of a firefly. No. Do Shanjun picked up a spirit fruit and took a bite. He said with a smile, This old man said that the things you did were really beyond this old man's expectations. This old man can't see through your thoughts anymore. If it's like what Zhong Qiao said, your schemes are really too deep. But if you didn't think so much, I'm afraid that even Thunder Monastery's Virokana would have to give up his seat for you. Senior. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Don't you know what this Junior is thinking? This Junior just wants to cultivate in peace. Cultivating in peace is only a kind of ideal. This ideal is only a white lotus flower in your heart. In this world, no matter how profound your cultivation is, you're all like a piece of duckweed. You can only drift in an unpredictable situation without being able to control yourself. Perhaps if your cultivation is high, you'll have a trace of power to protect yourself, but any resistance will be strangled by everything in this world. Do Shanjun said with a sigh. Even if it's this old man, it's also the same. Do Shanjun's tone at this time was already different from when he was at Black Wind Ridge. Although he still didn't see Xiaohua as an equal cultivator, his tone already faintly contained extremely high praise. Yes, this junior understands. Xiaohua naturally didn't dare to follow Do Shanjun's tone and asked further. He only said respectfully, this junior obtained senior's cultivation method and secret technique and has always been practicing bitterly. I want to have the power to protect myself. The tree wants to be still, but the wind won't stop. Xiaohua, you're in the middle of the situation. Right now, you're in the limelight. If you want to protect yourself, just relying on your cultivation isn't necessarily enough. Do Shanjun glanced at Xiaohua and said, Zhong Qiao's words are quite reasonable. You should also think more about it. Hiss. Xiaohua was startled and said in a low voice, Senior, when did you hear it? How come this junior didn't notice it? Humph, if I was discovered by you, what face would this old man have left? Do Shanjun scolded, then looked at Xiaohua and said with some praise, Your concealment technique is quite good. With this old man's ability, I can't see the whole thing. Remove the secret technique and let this old man see your cultivation. Thank you, Senior. Xiaohua's face showed ecstasy. Because Do Shanjun said this, it was clear that he wanted to give pointers to Xiaohua's cultivation. For an ordinary cultivator, this was a rare opportunity. Unfortunately, Xiaohua's heart was abnormally bitter. He didn't dare to let Do Shanjun, this old monster, touch his body. If Do Shanjun discovered the secret of his body, who knew what kind of fangs he would reveal? -13. Chapter 3954. However, since Do Shanjun had pointed it out, Xiaohua was also helpless. He could only brace himself and withdraw the secret technique, revealing the early stage of the spirit severing stage. Fortunately, Do Shanjun didn't reach out his hand at all. Just like before, his two eyes gave birth to black and white lattices. On each black and white lattice, tiny runes appeared. The runes rushed out like ants, filling Do Shanjun's entire eyes. In these black and white eyes, Xiaohua's whole body was cold, as if he was seen clearly by Do Shanjun from the inside out. Huh, it's a little strange. Do Shanjun exclaimed in surprise, just like when he examined the 5 brocade cloud painting. Then, he raised his hand and pressed his index finger and middle finger between his eyebrows. Pop! A strange silver rune exploded between Do Shanjun's eyebrows. In Do Shanjun's eyes, the black and white runes flashed with colorful brilliance, extremely dazzling. After a while, the brilliance in Do Shanjun's eyes gradually dissipated, revealing the previous black and white starry eyes. At this time, Do Shanjun's eyes showed obvious surprise. Xiaohua, when did you start to practice the red nascent soul technique? Do Shanjun stared at Xiaohua's eyes and asked word by word, why didn't this old man notice it last time? Red nascent soul technique? Xiaohua was stunned and asked, Junior doesn't know what red nascent soul technique is. Oh, Do Shanjun replied, it's the common loose immortal technique in the cultivation world. Senior. Xiaohua's heart jumped, and he hurriedly took out the scattered nascent soul ink yuntong from his arms and handed it to Do Shanjun and said, Junior got this ink yuntong by chance and saw that there was a secret technique to cultivate the nascent soul technique. You also know that Junior's spiritual power is relatively strong, and I don't have a useful technique. I saw that there were some unique techniques in this secret technique, so I tried to cultivate it. Do Shanjun took the ink yuntong and looked at it. His face was relieved, but he didn't speak, but closed his eyes and thought about something. Xiaohua's heart tightened. He stared at Do Shanjun and didn't dare to speak. After a while, seeing Do Shanjun open his eyes, he carefully asked, Senior, this technique, is there a great flaw? Where's the cultivation technique I gave you? Do Shanjun did not directly answer Xiaohua's question, but instead asked, why don't you cultivate those upright cultivation methods? Xiaohua replied with an extremely wrong tone, Senior, Junior naturally used the cultivation method that Senior gave me to cultivate. How can the crimson nascent technique be cultivated together with the immortal nascent technique? Do Shanjun sneered. An ordinary nascent soul cultivator only has 2 meridians. These meridians ultimately support the yin and yang of the spirit body. All cultivation methods rely on the body's meridians. Does your nascent soul have meridians all over your body? Can he cultivate Tao techniques? Junior. Xiaohua muttered to himself for a moment and then said with a smile, I used Senior's cultivation method to cultivate my physical body, meridians, and nascent soul. With the help of this so-called crimson nascent arts trick, Sai, you're really bold. Do Shanjun sighed and said, although the crimson infant technique is very powerful in the end, without the protection of the physical body, it is difficult to achieve the great Tao. Such examples can be found everywhere. Thus, as long as ordinary cultivators had a physical body, they would not attempt this cultivation technique that had no end in sight. Your cultivation is still shallow, so quickly give it up. Yes, Junior understands. Xiaohua nodded. Now your realm seems to have reached the spirit-severing stage, but in fact, you are still in the late nascent soul stage. In these decades, has there been no bottleneck from the nascent soul stage to the spirit-severing stage? Do Shanjun asked again. Xiaohua was shocked and hurriedly replied, Yes, Senior, Junior has been wondering what's going on with me. Moreover, I can cultivate the spirit-severing cultivation method that Senior gave me. The reason is naturally this crimson infant technique. Do Shanjun said, Your physical body and nascent soul have different cultivation paths. Of course, there will be a situation of chaos in your realm. Then how should I solve it? Xiaohua asked. Do Shanjun shrugged his shoulders and said lightly, You can't live if you want to. This old man also doesn't know how to solve it. Xiaohua was shocked. Looking at the ink cloud pupil that was still in Do Shanjun's hand, his eyes turned and asked, Senior, do you have the complete crimson infant technique? What? Do you want to go all the way? Do Shanjun raised the ink cloud pupil in his hand and asked thoughtfully, Junior thinks that if you want to solve it properly, you must have a complete understanding of the crimson infant technique. The cultivation method that Junior got is incomplete, and it is the understanding of others. I am afraid that it is not as authentic as the cultivation method in Senior's hands. If Senior has it, can you give it to Junior to comprehend? Maybe I can find a way to deal with it. Xiaohua explained, moreover, Junior wants to break through from the nascent soul stage, but I have not found a suitable medicinal pill. If Senior has a suitable medicinal pill, Junior can also solve it from another way. Your appetite is really not small. Do Shanjun sneered. This old man has not promised to give you the crimson infant technique, and you still want the breaking darkness pill? Xiaohua said with a smile. Since Senior has already given me a helping hand, you might as well help Junior to the end. If Junior walks a unique path, I may be able to help Senior in the future. Do Shanjun closed his eyes, and the ink cloud pupil in his hand turned over and over. After a while, Do Shanjun's finger moved, and the ink cloud pupil turned into ashes. Xiaohua was delighted. Sure enough, another ink cloud pupil appeared in Do Shanjun's hand. Do Shanjun opened his eyes and looked at Xiaohua. He passed the ink cloud pupil to Xiaohua and said, Xiaohua, this old man has high expectations for you. As long as I can help you, this old man will give it to you. However, you must not bite off more than you can chew, and do not be self-opinionated and arrogant like the Grand Mist ancestor. As long as you cultivate step by step, and everything you did before was out of your heart, this old man can guarantee that you can cultivate to the Mahayana realm. Of course, whether you can ascend or not depends on your own luck. This old man cannot guarantee it. See, Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air. Do Shanjun's words contained too much, and Xiaohua did not dare to think too much about it. This scarlet infant technique is complete. You can use it as a reference. Moreover, this old man did not add any restrictions. Do Shanjun said, and handed the ink cloud pupil to Xiaohua. Then, without waiting for Xiaohua to take it, he took out a chinquin bag from his sleeve and said, This is the dark-breaking pill, void-bearing pill, lotus-connecting pill, and green heaven pill. Since this old man wants to give it to you, this old man might as well give it to you. See, Xiaohua was stunned. He sucked in a breath of cold air again and looked at Do Shanjun in disbelief. The dark-breaking pill was a necessary pill to break through the bottleneck of the nascent soul realm and enter the spirit-severing stage. The void-bearing pill was used to break through to the void-refining stage. The lotus-connecting pill was used to break through to the unity stage. The green heaven pill was used to break through to the Mahayana realm. Although the hidden immortal continent and dawn rain continent were different, Xiaohua did not know whether the pills given by Do Shanjun would be useful. However, based on these pills, Xiaohua was able to see that Do Shanjun cared for him deeply. Xiaohua did not accept Mo Yuntong in the Qingkuan bag like before. Instead, he tidied up his robe and bowed respectfully. Junior Xiaohua, thanks Senior for your kindness. What Xiaohua said was not excessive. Xiaohua had never had a real master since he started cultivating. No cultivator had ever guided Xiaohua in his cultivation for a long time. Do Shanjun not only gave Xiaohua the cultivation method and divine sense secret technique after he separated his spirit, but now he also gave Xiaohua the red nascent soul technique and various pills and pill recipes. His importance in Xiaohua's cultivation was not inferior to the inheritance left by Longzi. How could Xiaohua not be grateful? However, to Xiaohua's surprise, Do Shanjun waved his hand and stopped Xiaohua from bowing. He said lightly, "This old man doesn't intend to teach you anything. You don't have to say this in front of this old man. This old man just thinks that you are a promising talent. Now that the hidden immortal continent is declining, this old man can help as much as he can." Although Senior has such a simple idea, Senior doesn't dare to accept it so easily. Xiaohua shook his head and insisted, "Senior, please accept Junior's bow." Xiaohua didn't use his spiritual power, he just simply bowed. "There's no need for that." Do Shanjun also insisted, "I think you also know that this old man is just making a deal with you. All of this is for this old man to get more in the future." "Yes, this Junior understands." Seeing this, Xiaohua had to get up and said, "Junior can promise Senior here that as long as it's not something that offends the heavens and reason, Junior can help Senior." "Ah?" Without waiting for Xiaohua to finish speaking, Do Shanjun interrupted him in astonishment. He even asked with a little dumbfounded, What did you say? As long as it's not something that offends the heavens and reason, you will help this old man?" Xiaohua nodded and said righteously, "Yes, this Junior is a principled cultivator of the Tao sect. This Junior can be selfish, can be greedy, can plot against others, but there is one thing that this Junior will never do, and that is not something that offends the heavens and reason. If Senior wants to make a deal with this Junior, then Senior should take back these things. Even if this Junior accepts them, he will never make a deal with Senior in the future." Hee. Looks like this old man's things from before are gone forever? Do Shanjun's face turned cold as he said in a low voice. Seeing that Do Shanjun was angry, Xiaohua felt a little regretful in his heart. He felt that he shouldn't have accepted them just now and acted according to the circumstances in the future. But he thought for a moment. Do Shanjun was so powerful, even if he cultivated for another 1,000 years, it would probably be difficult for him to be a match. Instead of making things difficult for him in the future, he might as well make a decision now. However, Xiaohua also understood in his heart that he was gambling right now, gambling that Do Shanjun wasn't the kind of person he thought. Xiaohua gritted his teeth and nodded. This Junior has already cultivated the cultivation technique Senior bestowed. If Senior wants to take back Mo Yuntong and the other things, this Junior will give them to Senior right away. But Senior didn't say what you wanted this Junior to do that day, so this Junior can't be considered to have broken the contract. -13. Chapter 39:55. Still stubborn. Do Shanjun looked at Xiaohua, who was a little rascal but still had some backbone. He was both angry and amused. With a wave of his hand, he threw Mo Yuntong and the Qingkuan bag into Xiaohua's arms. He said, "This old man wants to do something outrageous. Why would I need your help? In the 3 continents, there are only a few people who can stop this old man. Hee. As long as it's not an outrageous thing, this Junior can help Senior." Xiaohua took the things with a smile and sent them into the space. Even if Do Shanjun wanted to take them back, he was afraid that he couldn't. "Let's talk about helping later." Do Shanjun sighed, "Your cultivation is still not enough. If I say it now, it will mess up your cultivation." Senior's matter. This Junior is really curious. Xiaohua was really puzzled. His realm had already reached the spirit-severing stage, which was already considered good among the Tao cultivators of the hidden immortal continent, But in Do Shanjun's eyes, he was still not good enough. He really couldn't think of what Do Shanjun wanted him to help with. Alas, in the past, there was also a Tao cultivator like you, who also thanked me like this. He knew how to conduct himself better than you, and he kowtowed to this old man. But in the end, Do Shanjun looked at Xiaohua and sighed. This old man still ended up with nothing. Xiaohua's heart moved. He seemed to understand something, but he didn't dare to say it out loud. He smiled and said, "This junior is a casual person. I didn't expect that I was right not to insist today." Yes, Do Shanjun nodded. You were right not to be too attentive today. With that, Do Shanjun shook his hand again and took out a 1-foot-long jade ruler from his sleeve. He handed it to Xiaohua and said, "This thing is called the Thunder Ruler, and it records the thunder cultivation method of 10,000 thunderbolts. This old man sees that you have a 3-legged cat's thunder cultivation method, so this thing is also given to you. Remember, heavenly thunder is the power of heaven and earth. If you are not completely loyal and have a clear conscience, you can't cultivate it. Your character seems to be more upright than this old man, so this thunder cultivation method is just right for you. Moreover, you must practice well. This thunder cultivation method is related to what this old man needs your help in the future." Ah! Xiaohua was simply wild with joy. He almost blurted out, "Senior, this junior hasn't bowed at all. Why are you being so courteous?" Humph! Do Shanjun flicked his finger, and the thunder ruler turned into a bolt of lightning that fell into Xiaohua's arms. The moment the lightning touched Xiaohua's Taoist robe, it immediately converged. It was enough to show that Do Shanjun's magic had reached the realm of being able to release and withdraw at will. This time, Xiaohua wasn't polite. He stretched out his hand and took the lightning ruler into his space several times faster than the lightning ruler. Then, he rubbed his palms together with all his strength. He seemed to be very excited. "Do you feel like you've taken advantage of me?" Do Shanjun snappily glared at Xiaohua. "Hee, that's right. Junior wanted to see if there was anything good in the auction. But I didn't expect that before the auction even started, I would meet a lucky star like Senior. The things that Senior bestowed upon me are things that I wouldn't even dare to dream of. Tell me, how can this junior not be excited?" Xiaohua spoke the truth. "Auction house?" When Do Shanjun heard this, he rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "Were you the one behind the Yazi auction house?" "Yes, Senior." Xiaohua knew that he couldn't hide it from Do Shanjun, so he admitted it very quickly. Do Shanjun didn't understand and asked, "Why didn't you stay in Yuzhou and think about how to avoid the expedition of the Immortal Palace? Why did you come to Yuling Bay to pick a fight with the North Sea Dragon Palace?" "Senior, Junior can't compare to you. How could I dare to pick a fight with the North Sea Dragon Palace?" Xiaohua smiled apologetically and explained the origin of the matter in a simple manner. When Do Shanjun heard this, he nodded his head and said, "If that's the case, then it is in line with your character of being a good person. Xiao Jian schemed against Yuanya. You should be helping him get rid of the karma." "Sai, that's right. Junior is a good person." Xiaohua smacked his lips and told him about the matter of Jiang Sheng misunderstanding him. Do Shanjun waved his hand helplessly and said, "The matters of the 3 rivers and 4 seas are the matters of the sea race. Even the Dragon Island doesn't pay much attention to it. Why are you getting involved without any reason? Their bones are broken, but their tendons are still connected. The karma entanglement within is disorderly. No one can understand it clearly." At this point, Do Shanjun suddenly thought of something. He closed his eyes for a moment and said, "In room 7, there seems to be a dragon from the heavenly abode river. If you want to explain clearly and help your disciple tie this red string, you might as well go and take a look." "Forget it." Xiaohua waved his hand. "They almost sold me. Junior still wants to count copper coins for them?" "Do as you wish." Do Shanjun waved his hand and stood up. "I have stayed here for too long. I am afraid that it will cause misunderstandings. Oh, that Star Moon Palace will appear in 300 years. You have to hurry up and cultivate. If there is a chance to enter, it will be beneficial for you and me." "Yes, Junior understands." Xiaohua nodded. "Junior will definitely work hard to cultivate. You are on your own. Your cultivation method is too complicated. I hope that the thunderbolt can suppress these cultivation methods. Do Jun waved his hand and prepared to leave. Suddenly, Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat and he hurriedly said, Senior, back then, did you see that Junior knew how to attract lightning? So you? Hee hee. Who would have thought that Do Jun would not answer him at all? He raised his hand and grabbed, and several rays of light fell into his hand. He muttered as he slowly walked out of Xiao Hua's pavilion. Seeing Do Jun's figure disappear, Xiao Hua could not help but laugh loudly. His entire body turned into a ball and flew into the air. He somersaulted a dozen times in the air before floating down. He let out a long breath and shouted, Damn it, this is too refreshing. The Crimson Infant technique, this is not a cultivation method that can exist in the cultivation world. Thunderbolt, this is a complete lightning cultivation method. Even if the lightning element technique of the Imperial Thunder sect is not lost, it cannot be compared to this. This is a cultivation method that I cannot imagine. Today's auction was really worth it. Immediately, Xiao Hua sat down and his mind entered the space. At this time, the green-robed Xiao Hua also threw his job of teaching disciples to the side. He was holding the thunder ruler in his hand. On top of the thunder ruler, there were thin streaks of lightning that flowed into his hand. The green-robed Xiao Hua's body was also surging with lightning. His entire body seemed to have turned into lightning. Waves of indescribable enlightenment came from the green-robed Xiao Hua's primordial spirit. Jade Archive Xiao Hua's eyes slightly narrowed. His two eyes also turned into lightning. This lightning first trembled, then blurred and overlapped. One turned into two turned into four. In just a moment, small lightning streaks came out from Jade Archive Xiao Hua's eyes and fell on his face and robe. Moreover, these lightning streaks seemed to have spirituality as they rushed into the air and formed a huge lightning bolt that fell on the immortal beheading platform. Rumble. The immortal beheading platform flashed with lightning, and invisible waves spread in all directions. At the same time, another lightning bolt came out from the immortal beheading platform and fell on Jade Archive Xiao Hua's body. The two lightning bolts seemed to form a cycle that flowed in circles. A moment later, Xiao Hua's body emitted the sound of thunder and lightning. Xiao Hua's figure flickered and rushed to the front of the green-robed Xiao Hua. He raised his hand and grabbed a lightning talisman and placed it on the green-robed Xiao Hua's body. Rumble. A thunderous sound came out from the green-robed Xiao Hua's body. More lightning runes came out from his body and rushed along the lightning towards the immortal beheading platform. So that's how it is. Jade Archive Xiao Hua's body fell outside the lightning cycle. He looked at the runes and thoughtfully said, This lightning cultivation is not something an ordinary cultivator can cultivate. Not only does one have to have a straight and irreplaceable mind, but one also has to have a tough body. Presumably, Senior Du has already noticed that I's body is different, so he thought of teaching me. This Senior Du, what kind of person is he? His cultivation is so high that it can scare people to death. I almost lost my secret in front of him. The unstoppable thunderbolt is cultivated by fellow Taoist in green robes. This scarlet infant technique is equally important. It seems that only I can comprehend and cultivate it myself. As Jade Archive Xiao Hua muttered to himself, he raised his hand and the ink eye fell into his hand. A clear light flashed from Jade Archive Xiao Hua's eyes, and the ink eye gradually turned into nothingness. However, it was only a moment before a solemn expression appeared on Jade Archive Xiao Hua's face again. Moreover, there was an inconceivable expression mixed with this solemn expression. Not knowing how much time had passed, Jade Archive Xiao Hua suddenly opened his eyes. His figure shook as he came out of the space. When his mind returned to its original position, Xiao Hua opened his eyes. He saw the pretty Xiao Yi carefully standing at the side. She asked in a low voice, Spiritual Master, there will be a bid for refining materials soon. Xiao Hua nodded. This old man knows. You can leave now. Yes, Senior. Xiao Yi didn't dare to say more. The auction had been going on for a while, but Xiao Hua hadn't bid. He hadn't even opened the window of the pavilion. Zhong Qiao was afraid that there would be a change in the pavilion, so she forced Xiao Yi to break in and wake Xiao Hua up. Xiao Yi woke Xiao Hua up with trepidation, fearing that Xiao Hua would be angry. Now that Xiao Hua didn't pursue the matter, how could she not tactfully leave? Oh, wait, Xiao Hua said. Xiaoyi was startled. Her body trembled slightly as she turned around and asked, Senior, do you have any other orders? Take this spirit fruit. Xiao Hua pointed at the spirit fruit and smiled. This old man hasn't eaten it yet. You can use it. Many thanks, Senior. Xiaoyi was overjoyed. She quickly walked over and took the jade plates, then respectfully bowed and left. After Xiaoyi left, Xiao Hua raised his hand and patted the air. The window on the wall opened, revealing a huge auction hall. It wasn't much different from the auction hall in the Copper Pillar country. Fellow immortals. A tall and handsome Confucian cultivator held a folding fan in his hand and pointed at an inkstone-like imperial tool. He said, If no one bids, this inkstone-like imperial tool will be this fellow immortals. After waiting for a while, no one spoke. The Confucian cultivator tapped the folding fan in his hand, and the imperial equipment disappeared. Then, in front of the window sill opposite Xiao Hua, a disc as smooth as a mirror suddenly appeared. The imperial equipment was placed inside the disc. From the window sill, a white and tender arm, like a lotus root, stretched out. Two slender fingers took the imperial equipment and placed a chinkuan pouch on top of the disc. Only then did the disc disappear. -13. Chapter 3956. Alright, the Buddhist, imperial, and demon artifacts have all been auctioned. Next is a batch of Taoist magic treasures. The Confucian cultivator paused for a moment, and a strange expression appeared on his face. However, these magic treasures are different from the magic treasures of ordinary auctions. They were obtained by the merfolk of the North Sea by chance on a deserted island. After being appraised by our star-plucking tower's consecrator, they should be used by ancient cultivators. Fellow immortal Feng, is this true? Ancient Taoist magic treasures? A loud voice cried out in shock. The Confucian cultivator surnamed Feng shrugged and smiled. I am not a Taoist cultivator, so how would I know if these magic treasures were used by ancient cultivators? However, this Jedi says so. Even if fellow immortal doesn't believe me, you have to believe our star-plucking tower's consecrator, right? Quickly, let us see. A few impatient Confucian cultivators began to shout, Don't be impatient, don't be impatient. The Confucian cultivator surnamed Feng raised his hand and took out 4 or 5 magic treasures of different appearances from his chinkuan bag. As these magic treasures fell into the air, everyone's eyes lit up. These 5 magic treasures were simple and unadorned. A layer of light that could be seen with the naked eye faintly protected these magic treasures. Within the light, strands of runes faintly flickered, showing how precious these magic treasures were. Fellow immortals. The Confucian cultivator surnamed Feng raised his hand and grabbed the magic treasure closest to him. A scarlet brilliance of several feet shot out from the magic treasure as if it wanted to burn the surrounding space. The Confucian cultivator surnamed Feng introduced, This magic treasure is called the Li Fire Pestle. There is an ancient Li Fire formation inside. Under the activation of magic power, 3 layers of fire formations will be created. As for the specific power, I don't dare to speak carelessly. Fellow Taoist will know after bidding for it and refining it. At this point, the Confucian cultivator surnamed Feng hesitated for a moment and seemed to quietly open his mouth. However, his voice once again echoed throughout the auction hall. That's right, I won't tell ordinary people. This magic treasure is suitable for Taoist cultivators of the 5th grade and above. If fellow immortal is only at the 3rd or 4th grade, it's best not to bid. See, in an instant, the entire auction hall was deathly silent. Even Xiao Hua, who had just opened the window and hadn't said a word, was stunned. Damn it! Yuling Bei is indeed Yuling Bei. They even dare to bid for a magic treasure used by a 5th grade essence energy Dao cultivator. That is to say, there are Taoist experts at the 5th grade of essence energy and above in this auction. Xiao Hua thought to himself in surprise. But it was only for an instant, and Xiao Hua laughed involuntarily again. Not to mention himself, even Do Shanjun was also in the bidding hall. 5th grade origin energy, What did it count for? How do you bid for this item? A slightly hoarse voice broke the silence. 1 million top-grade primal stones. The scholar surnamed Feng replied without hesitation. All right, this old man offers 1 million. The hoarse voice cried out, his tone full of urgency. 1,100,000. Another voice called out before the first voice could even finish its sentence. 2 million. Damn it. Yuling Bay is indeed full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Xiao Hua listened to several different voices and inwardly cursed. Normally, even a single nascent soul cultivator is rare, but today, so many appeared all of a sudden. No wonder the people of the Immortal Palace came here. Not long after, the price of the leaf fire pestle had already reached 4 million high-grade primal stones. In the current hidden immortal continent, it was difficult to find traces of cultivators at the 5th grade of essence energy and above. However, what was even rarer than cultivators were ancient magic treasures like the leaf fire pestle. So too, 4 million top-grade primal stones was normal. Another cultivator raised the price a few more times, and finally, the leaf fire pestle was bought by an unknown Taoist cultivator for 7 million top-grade primal stones. Subsequently, the jade water toad, yearning soul entanglement, dragon crouching pillar, heaven shaking sword, and other magic treasures were also bought by unknown cultivators for around 3 million top-grade primal stones. Finally, the scholar surnamed Feng pointed at 2 items that looked like rings and said, finally, these 2 magic treasures should be a pair. So they were put together in the bidding. What I want to say is that this magic treasures effect is extremely special, and it may not be used in ordinary places. Moreover, whether it is Taoist magic power or Confucian true qi, they can all be used. Seeing that the scholar surnamed Feng only mentioned the appearance of the magic treasure but not its name, the group of human cultivators secretly laughed and didn't speak. Sure enough, after the scholar surnamed Feng said a few more words, a sea race couldn't help but shout, "Hey brat, what is this thing? You've been talking for half a day. How come I don't understand?" Haha, are you stupid? A human voice laughed loudly. Brat Feng talked for half a day, just to tell us that this magic treasure is a real treasure, and ordinary cultivators shouldn't covet it. I can tell you that if Brat Feng doesn't have 1 million primal stones per word, you can twist my head off. Hee hee, this senior is going too far with his words. The scholar surnamed Feng smiled and said, Junior's words only cost 700,000 primal stones. How can it reach 1 million? Bullshit. Quickly tell us what this thing is. The sea race shouted. The scholar surnamed Feng wasn't angry at all, and he pointed at the 2 rings and said with a smile, this thing is called the Heavenwing Spectroscope. That thing is called the Earthwing Spectroscope. These 2 treasures put together are called the 2-wing spectroscope. What bullshit thing is this? What's the use of it? The sea race was stunned, and Xiao Hua stood up from his seat in surprise and couldn't help but walk to the window. The scholar surnamed Feng said again, this magic treasure is refined with the polar magnetic rays, so it has no use in ordinary places. It can only be used inside the polar magnetic rays, and it can be used to control the polar magnetic rays. Boom. When the scholar surnamed Feng said this, the human race cultivators who knew about the polar magnetic rays were in an uproar. No one thought that the incomparably powerful polar magnetic rays could be controlled through magic treasures, so someone couldn't help but shout, fellow immortal Feng, you just said 6 words, right? Could it be that this 2-wing spectroscope has a price of 2 million primal stones? That's right. The scholar surnamed Feng nodded and said, the last ancient Tao magic treasure, the 2-wing spectroscope, has a price of 5 million primal stones. Fellow immortal can bid if you like it. 5 million primal stones. This old man wants it. Just as the scholar surnamed Feng's voice fell, someone immediately shouted. Xiao Hua's eyes narrowed, and his ears heard the bids of others. He took a deep breath and shouted, 10 million primal stones. Whoosh! The entire auction hall instantly became deathly silent, even faster than before. The scholar surnamed Feng looked at the window that hadn't appeared before in disbelief, and said with a trembling voice, Senior has bid 10 million primal stones? Nonsense. Xiao Hua said coldly. Who else wants to bid with this old man? Xiao Hua's voice was extremely cold, and it even contained soul cultivation soul techniques, which carried an indescribable threat in the ears of others. Is there anyone else who wants to bid with Senior? The scholar surnamed Feng's heart trembled, and he hurriedly asked, Granny, 10 million primal stones, how many cultivators can afford it? An almost inaudible voice came from the corner. Seeing this, the scholar surnamed Feng didn't dare to be long-winded. He waved the folding fan in his hand and said, Okay, this item is Senior's. Seeing the two-wing spectroscope disappear in front of the scholar surnamed Feng and land in his window, Xiao Hua waved his sleeve and immediately put it into the space. Then he let out a long sigh. Don't be fooled by his calm expression. His heart was clenched. After all, the two-wing spectroscope was a magic treasure that he had coveted for several hundred years. Seeing that he was about to bid for it, it would be strange if he didn't bid for Zhang Kai. Moreover, he was also afraid that someone would bid, so he directly bid 10 million primal stones, frightening many cultivators who wanted to bid. However, it was fortunate that the immortal envoys from the immortal palace who opposed him weren't here, otherwise his trick might not have succeeded. After putting away the two-wing spectroscope, Xiao Hua calmly placed a Chinquin pouch on the disc in front of the windowsill, and then hid in the pavilion without saying anything. Cough, cough. The scholar surnamed Feng checked the Chinquin pouch, and his face was filled with ecstasy. He said with a smile, Many thanks for Senior's support. This is the highest bid in this auction. If fellow immortal can't surpass it in the future, my star-picking tower will give fellow immortal a small surprise. Alright, next up is the beast slaves. The scholar surnamed Feng put away the Chinquin pouch, and the clouds beneath his feet moved. Several cracks appeared on both sides of the auction hall, and dozens of demonic beasts wearing chains inscribed with runes walked out from the cracks. Some of these demonic beasts were directly captured from the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Some were sold to my star-picking tower by the demonic beasts, and some were eliminated from the arena. The scholar surnamed Feng explained. However, fellow immortals, please don't worry. These demonic beasts have all been implanted with beast slave talismans. After a fellow immortal bids, as long as he controls the talisman, he can control the demonic beast's life and death. Moreover, this beast slave talisman was refined by an expert, so there definitely won't be any signs of backlash. Xiao Hua hid in the window, coldly watching the demonic beast's bidding. His heart was a bit confused, and there was an indescribable feeling in it. He looked at the humans in the auction hall, who were very excited. One by one, they enthusiastically bid for the beast slaves, and the atmosphere reached a climax. I understand now. As he watched the beast slaves being put into the Chinquin bracelet by their masters, Xiao Hua suddenly realized something. No wonder the Sea Clan of the Grotto Heaven River came to the Star-Picking Tower's auction hall. It turns out that they want to win here. Or perhaps they want to bid for a Yazi Arena's beast to test the Yazi Arena's strength. Then, Xiao Hua looked at the surrounding windows. These windows were all protected by essence arrays, so Xiao Hua's spiritual force could not penetrate them. He also could not tell which of the Sea Clan of the Grotto Heaven River belonged to. Perhaps I should pay them a visit? Xiao Hua's heart wavered, just as Do Shanjun had expected. At this moment, the scholar surnamed Feng said, Next up is a batch of materials for refining tools. Fellow immortals, if any of you are interested, you can bid. Soon after, the person in charge of the auction reported the quantity and type of materials. There were many materials that could be used to construct lightning boats and teleportation formations. Xiao Hua didn't hesitate and started bidding. -13. Chapter 39:57. Xiao Hua bought the majority of the materials in the auction in one go. Coupled with the fact that he had enough primeval stones in the space, he bought the majority of the materials in one go. Xiao Hua's big spending surprised many of the humans and monsters who were participating in the auction. They whispered to each other and tried to guess who Xiao Hua was. After all, the current Xiao Hua was completely different from the Xiao Hua of the Stargazing Tower. He had the bearing of a great master, and the aura of a saint inside and a monarch outside was brewing. How could his tone be the same as before? Even if Zhu Qing was by his side, she wouldn't be able to see Xiaohua's true face. After buying enough materials, Xiaohua had nothing to worry about in this auction. He thought for a moment and pulled Louis out of the space. Louis had obviously heard what Yuanya said. When he saw Xiaohua, he respectfully saluted and asked, "Master, is Xiaoyun in danger?" Although Yuanya didn't know much, Jiang Shang's appearance in the space was enough for Lu Yi to guess a lot. Xiaohua was glad that he let Louis out. Otherwise, he wouldn't know what Louis was thinking in the space. Xiaoyun should be fine. The one who is in trouble is Jiang Shang. Xiaohua muttered to himself for a moment, then explained the ins and outs of the matter. When Louis heard that Xiaoyun wasn't in danger, he smiled and said, "That's good. Disciple is only worried about Xiaoyun's safety. Disciple doesn't care about the heavenly abode river." Jiang Shang and the other sea races flooded the longevity town. Even if they were eaten by the barbarians, Disciple would still ask for a few skewers to eat. Xiaohua smiled and glared at Lu Yi. "Master still wants you to show off in front of the heavenly abode river and deepen their impression of you. But you want to eat dragon meat. How can Master let you go?" "Hee." Louis smiled and replied, "Master, Disciple knows what you're thinking. However, in the eyes of the sea races of the heavenly abode river, revenge and a great undertaking are of great importance. Disciple's cultivation is shallow. I'm only a first or second grade cultivator. How can they put me in their eyes? If Disciple goes there now, other than Xiaoyun, no one will give Disciple a second glance. Rather than give them a bad impression, Disciple might as well not show his face." "Not bad, not bad." Xiaohua nodded. "Master was thinking of leading." "Oh, I was thinking of letting you all gain experience, but I forgot about this. You should focus on your cultivation. When you are able to stand proudly among the hidden immortals, there is no need for you to look for others. Even the dragons of the heavenly abode river might come knocking on your door." "Master." When Xiaohua said the word visit, there was a double meaning to it. Louis was a little embarrassed when he heard it and said in a low voice, "This disciple regards Xiaoyun as his own little sister. You shouldn't think too much." "Hee." Xiaohua smiled and said righteously, "In the future, when this old man has the opportunity, I will also accept Xiaoyun as my disciple. Damn it, fire prevention, theft prevention, senior brother. I want to see how you're going to take care of your little sister." Master." Lu Yi's face flushed red. He, who had always been clever, didn't know how to answer. "Haha." Xiaohua laughed loudly. How could he not see through Lu Yi's thoughts? Wasn't a youth yearning for love exactly what Lu Yi and the others were thinking? "This disciple is going back to cultivate." Lu Yi bowed and said, "I will leave everything to Master. When this disciple reaches the Grandmaster realm as soon as possible, I will come to share Master's worries." Xiaohua was slightly surprised and said curiously, "Grandmaster realm, your requirements are really high. Master will have to wait for you to share his worries. Who knows how long that will take?" "Hee. If this disciple becomes a Grandmaster, then won't Master be a Mahayana realm master?" Louis pursed his lips and smiled. This disciple is looking forward to that day. Good flattery. Xiaohua flicked his sleeve and put Louis into the space. He smiled and said, "Go back and cultivate well." After putting Louis away, Xiaohua pondered for a moment and walked out of the pavilion. When Xiaoyi saw Xiaohua coming out, she hurriedly bowed and said, "Senior, what's the matter? Take this old man to room 7. This old man is going to visit an old friend." Xiaohua ordered indifferently. Xiaoyi hurriedly nodded, raised her hand and said, "Senior, please." Outside the pavilion was a corridor, but there was no trace of other people. As Xiaoyi walked for a distance, Xiaohua felt a faint aura of a yuan ray sweep past. Then, his eyes lit up. Another pretty Xiaoyi came to greet him and said respectfully, "Greetings, Senior. This old man is here to visit an old friend." Xiaohua took out a jade eye and wrote 2 words, Jiangshang, in it. He handed it to Xiaoyi and said, "This old man doesn't have a name token, so I will give this to them." "Yes, Senior." Xiaoyi took the jade eye, walked to the door and whispered a few words. Then, a finger stretched out from the door and hooked the jade eye, not allowing Xiaoyi to enter. After waiting for half a cigarette, a layer of inscriptions and clouds flashed in front of the door, and a human figure in a cloak poked his head out. Although the cloak covered the aura of the sea tribe, an unconcealable dragon's breath still passed through, and the two little girls trembled under the pressure. "Who are you?" A hoarse voice came from the cloak. It was obviously changed. Xiaohua raised his hand and saluted. He transmitted his voice. "I am Xiaohua of Dao Sect. The matter of Yazi Auction House was done by me." The cloak clearly trembled again, and the tone was somewhat hurried. "You? How did you know I was waiting here?" Xiaohua smiled. "How I know is not a big deal. You don't need to know. You only need to know that I came here alone, and I have nothing to do with the North Sea Dragon Palace." "Please." The dragon in the cloak said a rare word. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "I am not in a hurry to go in. You discuss with the dragon inside first. Don't wait for me to go in and make a move. At that time, both of us will lose face, and we will attract the attention of Zhai Xinglu. And, Spiritual Master Xiao, please wait a moment." The dragon in the cloak nodded slightly and returned to the room. After a while, the door of the room appeared, and the hoarse voice came from inside. "Spiritual Master, please come in." "Okay." Xiaohua agreed and stepped into the room. However, in view of Jiang Shang's vigilance, Xiaohua did not let down his guard. Sure enough, after entering the room, Xiaohua was greeted by 4 cloaked dragons. Each of them stood at a corner, surrounding Xiaohua in the middle. For powerful dragon forces were like big hands clamping Xiaohua in the middle. Xiaohua's body flashed with a faint golden light. He did not deliberately resist and only said, "Jiang Sheng is in the hands of Ba Bao of Bayan. If you don't believe me, you can go and investigate." Of course, if Ba Bao handed Jiang Sheng over to the North Sea Dragon Palace, then it has nothing to do with me. "What? How did Jiang Sheng fall into the hands of Ba Bao?" Another slightly shrill voice came. Xiaohua smiled faintly and ignored the murderous dragon force. He walked to a chair and said, "What's the point of asking this? If you were late, Jiang Sheng might have been roasted by Ba Bao into dragon meat skewers. Of course, I also want to remind you that if Ba Bao and the North Sea Dragon Palace work together to set a trap in Bayan, don't blame me for not warning you." The 4 dragons whispered to each other and discussed for a moment. 2 of them hurriedly left while the other 2 dragons stood there vigilantly. Xiaohua ate a few spirit fruits and stretched out his finger. 2 spirit fruits flew out and landed in front of the 2 dragons. He smiled and said, "My 2 dragon friends, why are you so nervous? I came alone. What are you afraid of? Besides, what happened in the Yazi arena a few days ago? Don't you know?" Swish. 2 streams of dragon chi swirled in the air, and the 2 dragon fruits turned into powder. A dragon said with a hoarse voice, "This old man and the other dragons naturally know about the Yazi auction house. But, as for what exactly happened, I'm not too sure." "Oh, I see." Xiaohua understood. He knew everything that happened in the Yazi arena, but the North Sea Dragon Palace did not disclose the details. In particular, the dragons of the Heavenly Abode River couldn't find out the details. Otherwise, they wouldn't have prepared to bid for the Yazi arena. Xiaohua raised his hand and said, "Please have a seat. Let me tell you the ins and outs of the matter. However, since I'm not afraid of the North Sea Dragon Palace and treat you so honestly, you 2 dragon friends don't have to be so stingy and careful, right?" "All right." The 2 dragons looked at each other. It was unknown if they could see each other's expression through the cloak. Then, one dragon took off his cloak, and the other did the same. However, the dragon who took off his cloak first walked over and sat beside Xiaohua. The other dragon was still on guard. Xiaohua glanced at the dragon. It still had a ferocious dragon face, no different from Ao Zhan, Ao Qian, and the others he had seen before. However, the 2 snow-white eyebrows above the fist-sized eyes were a little eye-catching. "Fellow immortal, your surname is also Jiang, right?" Xiaohua probed. The dragon cupped his hands and said, "I'm the 3rd elder of the Heavenly Abode River, Jiang Hai." Excuse me. So it's the 3rd elder." Xiaohua cupped his hands, but the respect in his tone was limited. "We know Daoist Zhao's name, but this is Yuling Bei. We can't be careless, so I have to be careful," Jiang Hai explained politely. Xiaohua smiled and replied, "Of course, you should be careful. However, being too careful will hurt people's hearts. As he spoke, Xiaohua recounted the whole story. When he reached the part where he threw Jiang Sheng into Bai Yan's hands, the dragon beside him couldn't help but cry out, "Spiritual Master Xiao, since you've already rescued Jiang Sheng, why throw him into Bai Yan's hands? You only need to tell him the reason. Isn't that better than anything else?" Now that this misunderstanding has been formed, if anything happens to Jiang Sheng, -13.